Chapter 257. To deal with Tian Chao, Ling Xiao was too lazy to use the stronger floating snow sword. Novel. The ice-glazed sword was enough. 13 swords transforming shadows. It was still a quasi-gold martial art, which was also a quasi-transcendent martial art in the secular world. 13 figures appeared from Ling Xiao's body and tore through the air, pouncing on Tian Chao. Although Ling Xiao was currently using the quasi-gold grade martial art, 13 shadow transformation swords, he was secretly using the fourth move of Snow Lotus sword technique, Ice Heart, because he wanted to see if this move was effective against all sword moves. The result of this test was good. Although the buff wasn't that great, the power of the 13 swords transformed shadows had almost doubled. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The figures kept flashing, and the sword light kept stabbing out. Tian Chao felt like an idiot. He could only defend in a sorry state and did not even have a chance to counterattack. But even so, there were still many wounds on his body. His clothes were pierced until they were mottled, as if they had been washed by a rain of swords. Great Chaos Palm! Knowing that he would lose if this continued, Tian Chao finally used his martial soul. Behind him was a huge palm. The palm was yellowish and was 3 to 4 meters tall. There's such a strange martial soul. Ling Xiao had seen it today. This kind of martial soul was not seen in the secular world, and it was a complete martial soul. It was just a transparent body in the first stage. To use his martial soul to deal with a new outer sect disciple, Tian Chao felt extremely ashamed. So he wanted to completely defeat Ling Xiao and make Ling Xiao kneel in front of him and apologize. This way, he might be able to make up for his sorry state today. The terrifying huge palm seemed to merge with Tian Chao's palm and directly pushed towards Ling Xiao. In the process, a layer of the ground was pushed away and new soil rolled out from the ground. The scene was very shocking. You think you're the only one with a martial soul. Ling Xiao sneered and shook the long sword in his hand. Blood shadow destruction. In the next moment, his figure disappeared. Everyone was able to sense a biting cold air. However, they were unable to determine where this cold air was coming from. The blood shadow martial spirit combined with the sure-kill skill of the 13 shadow transforming swords. Blood shadow extermination. The power of this move might not be comparable to Tian Chao's great chaotic origin palm, but in terms of strangeness and lethality, it surpassed it by far too much. You'd better stop what you're doing, or else my sword will go in. When Ling Xiao reappeared, the ice-glass sword in his hand was stabbed into Tian Chao's back. Moreover, the sword had already pierced into his body. It was only an inch away from his heart. If it was just a light push, this sword could end Tian Chao's life. I won't move. I won't move. Tian Chao was completely scared out of his wits. Fortunately, killing was not allowed in the sect. Otherwise, he would definitely die here today. This was because he didn't even see how Ling Xiao had attacked. His face was pale and his body was trembling. He was already regretting accepting this matter from He Suo. He thought that he could easily get those rewards, but he didn't expect Ling Xiao to be so terrifying that it completely exceeded his expectations. Hiss! Everyone watching the battle sucked in a breath of cold air. No one thought that this would be the result. Su Ying's expression became more and more unsightly, while the third prince, Zhao Ji, lowered his head. No one knew what he was thinking. And not bad, not bad. The effect of the fourth style of the Snow Lotus sword art, Ice Heart, is really impressive. In terms of attack power, it can completely make the quasi-gold grade martial art. 13 shadow swords surpass a gold grade martial art. Ling Xiao was very satisfied with the results of his experiment. Tian Chao, some money really can't be earned. Ling Xiao sheathed his sword and patted Tian Chao's shoulder. Do you know who injured He Suo? It was me. Do you think you're stronger than him? Hearing this, Tian Chao couldn't help but tremble. He Suo was a transcendent realm third layer cultivator. He only heard that He Suo went to Baiyun province and returned with serious injuries. It was rumored that He Suo was injured by Grandmaster Baiyun, but it seemed that this rumor might not be true. Enough! Hurry up and take your people and leave. I don't want the same thing to happen a second time. If there is a next time, although I can't kill you, I can definitely make it so that you won't be able to break through for the rest of your life. Ling Xiao kicked Tian Chao's butt, but Tian Chao didn't resist and ran away like a wisp of smoke. He didn't even care about the 3 people lying on the ground. I'll have to trouble senior brothers and sisters. If anyone knows these 3 dogs, take them away. Leaving them here will affect the environment. And Tian Chao, stop right there. Ling Xiao suddenly thought of something. Tian Chao had already run more than 100 meters away, but when Ling Xiao shouted, he obediently stopped. Junior brother, what are your orders? Immediately find someone to replace this door with the best material. You only have half an hour to prepare. After half an hour, if this door isn't replaced, just wait for it to be destroyed. Ling Xiao didn't have the slightest bit of sympathy or pity for Tian Chao. This time, he bullied the weak and feared the strong. The key was that because of this guy, Cold Plum left. He vented all the displeasure in his heart on this unlucky guy. I'll immediately call someone to fix it. Don't worry. Tian Chao ran away as if he had been granted amnesty. Not bad, Brother Ling. Your battle skills are really amazing. Although many people were shocked by Ling Xiao's strength, Zhao Ji seemed to be different from them. Zhao Ji already knew that Ling Xiao's battle skills were strong, but his potential wasn't as good as his, so he still wanted to win over Ling Xiao. Your Highness, Second Prince, you flatter me. Battle skills are just insignificant tricks. Potential is the way to go. Ling Xiao didn't dislike Zhao Ji, nor did he have any intention of befriending him. Because people of the imperial family entered the world of sex, there was actually only a little bit of relationship left. It was really meaningless. Zhao Ji smiled a little awkwardly. When he first moved into the stone house, he used a condescending attitude to persuade Ling Xiao not to spend too much time on battle skills. But today he was slapped in the face. If Ling Xiao's battle skills weren't so powerful, no matter how good his potential was, it was meaningless. He would probably have been destroyed by Tian Chao long ago. Junior brother Ling, that Tian Chao is not an obedient person. You offended him this time. I'm afraid you'll get into trouble. Wu Xiang sighed and said, I've already figured out Tian Chao's strength. He's a little stronger than a cat or a dog, but there's no need to be afraid. Ling Xiao didn't understand why Wu Xiang was so worried. You don't understand. Tian Chao has a very good relationship with some of the top 30 outer disciples. The top 30 outer disciples are all half-step masters. They're not at the same level as Tian Chao. If they come to trouble you, you'll really be in trouble. Wu Xiang smiled bitterly. Thank you for your reminder, Senior Brother Wu. I'll be careful. Chapter 258. The trouble he was worried about did not appear. Instead, Tian Chao really sent a few people over to help change the door of the stone house. The material used for the new door was quite good. In any case, it was much better than the broken wooden board from before. An ordinary 9th level Martial Vein Realm Martial Master would not be able to break this door with a single punch. Since Tian Chao was so obedient, Ling Xiao could not be bothered to find trouble with him. Instead, he entered a state of cultivation again. He originally thought that fighting with Tian Chao would stimulate the power in his body and break through to the 9th level Martial Vein Realm. However, the effect was obviously not that good. Tian Chao was too weak. He could not make Ling Xiao use much of his true essence. The pressure was not great, so the breakthrough was not successful. Since he was unable to break through for the time being, Ling Xiao did not think too much about it. He simply focused on improving his fighting skills. After today's events, he also realized that although fighting skills were not as important as cultivation, without a backer, if his fighting strength was not good, it meant that he would be suppressed. Therefore, he had to work together in this aspect. One of his clones continued to cultivate the bronze sword controlling technique, while the other began to cultivate the new divine prison king fist. It was said before that once the divine prison king fist was cultivated to the highest realm, it would be upgraded. Although the name of the divine prison king fist had not changed, there were many more moves. Furthermore, its grade had been upgraded to a gold grade rare martial art. In addition to the power of the first 5 moves, there were also new moves. However, these 3 moves were completely different from the previous 5 moves. It could even be said that they did not belong to the same system. They were life-taking, soul-stealing, and destruction. Life-taking was to take a person's life. This punch was extremely powerful. Soul-stealing was to destroy a person's soul. It focused on attacking the soul. Destruction was the combination of the first 2 moves. It killed people and stole their souls, making it impossible for the opponent to survive. Why does this move sound so terrifying? Ling Xiao could not help but shake his head. Even so, he still had to cultivate. There was no good or evil in martial arts. It all depended on who used it. He had never been picky about martial arts. As long as he felt that he could use it to improve his strength, he could use it. After the 2 doppelgangers were done with their arrangements, the main body began to practice the gold-grade entry-level martial arts copied from the Moon Tower. Of course, he didn't learn these things to use in battle. It was purely for nourishment for Cloud, Dragon Divine Journey, and Ox Demon Arts. Since Ling Xiao had already cultivated a rare gold-grade martial art, it was much easier for him to comprehend this entry-level martial art. In less than a day, he had already cultivated a gold-grade entry martial art to the Great Perfection realm. Then he directly handed it over to the Ox Demon Arts to devour. The anticipated evolution had begun. Because Ox Demon Arts was of a lower grade, he hadn't really used it. But now he could finally bring it back to the battle schedule. After a round of devouring, Ox Demon Arts successfully evolved. After the evolution, the name of the Ox Demon Art changed, becoming the 9 Demons Divine Art. Of course, the change in name also brought about an increase in level. At this point, Ox Demon Arts had successfully evolved into a gold grade entry level martial art. The 9 Devil Divine Arts was clearly of the same attribute as the Ox Demon Arts. It was classified as a supplementary cultivation method. It could increase the power and level of other martial arts. Moreover, it could also form a strange armor like the Ox Demon Arts. This kind of armor could completely cover the martial artist's body, causing the martial artist's body to become very tall. In addition, it had a special effect, and that was demonization. The so-called demonization was the ability to transform one's whole body or part into 9 types of demon kings. Currently, he could only transform into an ordinary ox demon or demon king. To Ling Xiao, this was undoubtedly an additional layer of protection for his life. It was easy to imagine how shocking it would be if Ling Xiao, who was in the state of the 9 demons' divine arts, used other martial skills. It could even be said that the 9 devil divine arts gave the 13 swords transformed a new opportunity to withdraw from the battle schedule. This was because once the 9 devil divine arts was used, all martial arts would automatically increase by level. Then, the quasi-gold grade 13 swords transformed martial art would be equivalent to a gold grade entry level martial art. If it was combined with the ice heart, then it would be possible to display the power of a rare grade martial art. It must be known that even among the disciples of the Wahua school, those who could simultaneously master 3 gold grade martial arts were very rare. Moreover, the gold grade martial arts they mastered were mostly entry-level martial arts, because only inner sect disciples could come into contact with rare grade martial arts, unless they brought a higher level martial art from the outside world. But those who could do such a thing were probably only Su Ying or Zhao Ji. Even Zhao Ci couldn't comprehend it because she didn't have enough potential. From this point of view, Ling Xiao's advantage in martial arts in the outer sect was very obvious. This was also the reason why he didn't fear a quasi-master. The Ox Demon Arts evolved into the 9 Devil Divine Arts, and the cultivation of the 2 doppelgangers also had results. The Bronze Sword Controlling art smoothly entered the realm of greater mastery, and it had already been cultivated to the 5th level. He also comprehended a new move for the Divine Hell King Fist kill. It took him a full day and night to do all this. Wu Xiang still didn't return for the whole night, and Zhao Ji and Zhao Ting didn't stay in the stone house either. He didn't know if it was because the conditions of the stone house were too poor, or if there were other reasons. In any case, Ling Xiao discovered that their cultivation had improved a lot, and he guessed that they had obtained some benefits. People from the imperial family were really good. However, this kind of thing couldn't be envious. At dawn, Wu Xiang came back. This time he was directly carried back, and it could be seen that Wu Xiang's body was seriously injured. Senior brother Wu? What's going on? Although Ling Xiao didn't spend much time with Wu Xiang, this honest person was very good to him. He brought him to familiarize himself with the situation and explained some of the rules of the Yuehua school to him. This couldn't be considered a great favor, but Ling Xiao was the kind of person who would repay a drop of water with a gushing spring. He couldn't bear to see his friends get injured, so when he saw that Wu Xiang was seriously injured, his expression didn't look too good. Without waiting for Wu Xiang to speak, one of the 2 people who brought Wu Xiang backside and said, "Newcomer, I know you defeated Tian Chao, but the situation in the outer sect is more complicated, so you shouldn't ask too much. It's not the first time senior brother Wu was injured, but it wasn't this serious before." After saying that, the 2 of them hurriedly left. "Let's go. I'll take you to the medicine hall." Without saying anything else, Ling Xiao carried Wu Xiang on his back and rushed to the medicine hall. The medicine hall was a very large organization in the Yuehua school, and it was equivalent to the outer sect hall. Even the herb mountain was part of the medicine hall. Chapter 259. Oh, little guy, we meet again. It's Senior. Ling Xiao had never expected to meet the old man who had guarded the God Sealing Catalog in the medicine hall. Of course, his dog was also there. Novel, the dog, was still sleeping lazily on the table. It only glanced at Ling Xiao's arrival and ignored him. "Ha ha ha, we are really fated." Elder Yang laughed very happily. Ling Xiao hurriedly said, "Senior, please help me take a look at senior brother Wu's condition." Hee. An ordinary person wouldn't be able to trouble this old man. However, since you're here, this old man will personally diagnose him. Elder Yang was definitely not bragging. He was the hall master of the medicine hall. Usually, when an injured person was sent here, even if it was an inner disciple, he would let the pharmacists under him deal with it. He would not easily make a move. Even the higher-ups of the Yuehua school might not be able to invite him. Although his cultivation was not particularly strong, as a pharmacist he was a very high-level one. He was simply a special target of the Yuehua school's protection, including the Yuehua school's headmaster. No one dared to touch him easily. After all, there were too many experts who owed him a favor. Once they made a move on him, they would become a target of scorn. Such an amazing person was actually willing to give face to Ling Xiao. In the end, he had taken a fancy to Ling Xiao's comprehension and wanted to take him in as a disciple. Otherwise, a small outer disciple like Ling Xiao would not be worth it. Well, it's not a big problem. It's mainly because he was overworked and beaten up. That's why he's like this. I'll just prescribe him some medicine. After a round of diagnosis, Elder Yang said, "This child is probably working in a mine. The sect needs a lot of iron or to forge weapons, but this kind of thing should be handed over to ordinary people in the secular world. Why is an outer disciple like him doing this?" Ling Xiao looked at Wu Xiang, who had already fallen asleep, and could not help but feel a little angry. It was clear that someone was trying to make life difficult for Wu Xiang. That was why they did this. "Thank you, Senior. You don't have to be so polite. Have you considered my request? If you really don't want to be this old man's disciple, you can come work in the medicine hall." In any case, you should be announcing the new outer sect disciples' work assignments today. Old Yang said with a smile. All right, senior, since you've put it this way, if I still don't give you face, then I'm really not a good person. Ling Xiao simply nodded. He had thought about it. Although Elder Yang's strength was inferior to the flame deities, his status was definitely higher than the flame deities, a newly advanced Sky Tier Elder. Moreover, if he wanted to increase his strength quickly, he would need medicinal herbs. Working in the medicine hall was a very good choice for him. Moreover, looking at Wu Xiang's situation, he had already offended He Suo. If things went wrong, he might be assigned to a more difficult place to work. That would not be good. Ha ha ha, that's great. How about this? When the deacon in charge of assigning tasks arrives and assigns you a job, just tell him that you've already discussed it with this old man. He definitely won't dare to stop you. Elder Yang laughed and said, Understood. Then this junior will take senior brother Wu away first. Well, remember to let him take the medicine on time. If possible, it's better not to do that kind of work anymore. It's too hard, and it will delay your cultivation time. Elder Yang reminded him. Ling Xiao nodded, then took the medicine, paid the money, and carried Wu Xiang back. Because it was just ordinary medicinal herbs, it was enough to pay with money. The Yuehua school also needed a lot of silver and gold to pay the ordinary workers. He couldn't let his disciples do too shabby work. The main reason was that there were not enough people, and it was too much of a waste of cultivation time. Thank you for your hard work, junior brother Ling. Wu Xiang had already woken up when he returned to the stone house. What's the trouble? Senior brother, what happened to your injuries? Were you beaten up? Wu Xiang was silent. Senior brother, just tell me. In the outer sect, there is really no existence that I, Ling Xiao, am afraid of. My current goal is the inner sect. Ling Xiao was not arrogant. For him, breaking through to the 9th level of the martial vein would be a piece of cake. At that time, he wouldn't be afraid of anyone under the transcendent realm. What half-step grandmaster? He was more concerned about the real, transcendent grandmasters. Well said. Zhao Ji suddenly walked in from outside and clapped his hands. The outer sect is just a bunch of small fries. Our goal should be the inner sect. That's where the real geniuses gather. There are many people like Ming Tian and Lung Hao. You came back to accept a job assignment. Ling Xiao asked. That's not it. I've already found a job. I just came back to pack my things and move to the equipment hall, Zhao Ji explained. How about it, Ling Xiao? Come with me. You offended Tian Chao, so the job assigned to you won't be good. Thank you for your kindness, Second Prince, but there's really no need. Ling Xiao said with a smile. Then there's no other way. I just want to remind you that the one who injured Wu Xiang is Yang Cheng, who is ranked 10th in the outer sect. He's very strong. Even among the half-step grandmasters, he's one of the best. This can be seen from his ranking. Don't stand up for irrelevant people. It won't end well for you. After speaking, Zhao Ji went to pack his things. Yang Cheng. Ling Xiao silently called out this person's name. Ling Xiao, the assignments are coming. Hurry up and gather at the square. A familiar disciple shouted from the outside. Since Ling Xiao defeated Tian Chao, his popularity among the new disciples was very high. Everyone was willing to build a good relationship with him. Got it. Hearing the shout outside, Ling Xiao responded. He then arranged for Wu Xiang to rest and walked out. On the square, most of the new outer disciples had already gathered here, including a few who had already obtained jobs. They were also here to watch the fun. When Ling Xiao arrived, Zhao Ji also followed him. It's said that the top 30 outer sect disciples will come today, but I don't know how many of them will come. Everyone wants to see. Zhao Ji said to Ling Xiao with a smile. Obviously, he was reminding him. That Yang Cheng was the outer sect disciple ranked 10th. They're coming. 3 of them came at once. In the eyes of the new outer sect disciples, the top 30 outer sect disciples were legends. After all, they were the top 30 among more than 1,000 people, and all of them were half-step grandmasters. Therefore, when someone came, they all became excited. Ling Xiao followed the crowd's gaze. He found that there were indeed 3 people. They were all unfamiliar faces. Yang Qing is really coming, and Li Anil, who is ranked 26th. Even Jin Ming, who is ranked 3rd, is here. Zhao Ji seemed to be very familiar with the outer sect of the Yuehua school. He soon said the names of the 3 people. After all, he was the second prince of the royal family. He was good at gathering information. Chapter 260. When Jin Ming, Yang Qing, and Li Anil appeared, all the outer disciples waiting in the square showed a look of awe. Novel, law of course, Ling Xiao was an exception. To make him feel awe, you must at least be in the transcendent realm. The one in white is Yang Qing. He specializes in using spears, and his spear skills are extremely terrifying. If you want to take revenge for Wu Xiang, you have to understand him thoroughly. Zhao Ji continued. The one next to Yang Qing is Li Anil, ranked 26th, good at movement skills. The one in the middle is Jin Ming, right? Yes, that's Jin Ming. Zhao Ji nodded and said, Jin Ming's body was clearly shorter than Yang Qing and Li Anil, but he gave people a strange illusion, as if he was the tallest and most powerful of the 3. He was thin like a skinny monkey. However, the confidence and power in his eyes were frightening. Don't be fooled by Jin Ming's appearance. This kid is very powerful. You probably didn't expect that he is best at defensive martial arts. His body is very strong. Don't be deceived by the appearance. Zhao Ji reminded. Ling Xiao nodded. Others couldn't see this, but he could see it. This Jin Ming should have a complete martial spirit that strengthened the body, and his potential should be relatively strong in the physical aspect. Ling Xiao absolutely believed that even if Jin Ming didn't use true essence, he could easily defeat ordinary martial artists below the peak of the 9th layer martial vein. Ling Xiao didn't expect that the deterrent and pressure Jin Ming brought to him would actually make him break through in this situation. This guy's aura was too strong. Compared to him, Tian Chao was not even comparable to an ant. Ling Xiao closed his eyes and began to consolidate the cultivation of the early 9th layer martial vein. Breaking through now was really not a time-consuming process, but fortunately he could exchange his main body with his martial spirit avatar. His main body entered the mountain river world to cultivate. The martial spirit avatar stood outside and continued to chat with Zhao Ji. However, Zhao Ji didn't notice such a huge change at all. In addition to possessing a complete martial soul that could strengthen one's body, Jin Ming should have also cultivated a defensive martial art that was not inferior to the heavenly dragon golden body. Jin Ming must have brought it from the outside world. As expected, Ling Xiao was not the only genius. The potential of Jin Ming's body was probably not inferior to Ming Tian's. When they arrived at the square, Jin Ming's aura swelled even more obviously. Many outer sect disciples trembled in fear, and some even knelt on the ground. The kind of terrifying aura was truly unbearable. The qi and blood in his body became restless, and his true essence also seemed to be flowing in reverse. Terrifying. Zhao Ji's face was a little pale. Although he didn't kneel down, his body was obviously trembling. In the secular world, I have never seen such a terrifying half-step master. This guy's aura is probably on par with a transcendent. That Ling Xiao is not bad. Not only did he defeat Tian Chao, but he also did not waver under senior brother Jin's aura. Amazing, amazing. Li Anil, who was ranked 26th, said with a smile. Only 3 people can stand there. He is indeed extraordinary. Yang Qing said with a gloomy face. At this time, only Ling Xiao, Zhao Ji, and Suing were standing there. The rest were all kneeling on the ground. Humph! Jin Ming snorted coldly, but it was directed at Ling Xiao. A powerful aura directly turned into a substance and rushed towards Ling Xiao. Unfortunately, it was his martial soul avatar that was standing there. The The body may be affected by the aura, but the martial soul avatar was not at all, because the martial soul avatar was completely condensed by soul power and true essence. It had no qi and blood, so it was basically unaffected by the aura. Therefore, Ling Xiao was still standing there with a smile on his face. Jin Ming's face changed and said, "Good guy, this kid is indeed somewhat capable, but if he wants to be a tyrant in the outer sect, he has to pass through me first." "Yes, senior brother Jin, you are the embodiment of justice and the idol of the weak." This Ling Xiao actually bullied Tian Chao, too overbearing. Li Anil hurriedly flattered. He didn't know what Tian Chao said, but it seemed that Ling Xiao's reputation among the outer sect experts was not very good. Jin Ming seemed to be very happy with Li Anil's flattery. He said coldly, "Arrange the work later, and show this kid who is boss first." Originally, the work of the new outer sect disciples was arranged by the deacons of the outer sect. However, these deacons, in the name of training the disciples, gave this kind of work to the top disciples in the outer sect. This time, the person in charge was Jin Ming. Therefore, if he intended to show Ling Xiao who was boss, he could really do it right away. However, Jin Ming didn't know that Ling Xiao had already been reserved by the medicine hall master. Listen carefully. The work of the outer sect disciples is still relatively heavy. If you can't complete it, you won't be able to enjoy the benefits of being a disciple of the Yuehua school and will be punished. You'd better listen carefully. Jin Ming said this and handed a list to Li Anil. "Junior brotherly, you arrange it." In fact, the work on the list had been arranged in advance, so he just had to read it out loud. Li Anil nodded and happily took the list. To him, Jin Ming was someone he absolutely couldn't provoke. He had to smile with him properly so that he could continue to mingle. Although they were both in the top 30 of the outer sect and were both half-step masters, Jin Ming's strength was definitely much stronger than his. Of course, there was another person above Jin Ming, and that was He Suo. He Suo was a genius in the inner sect, so he had to deal with him well. Otherwise, he would definitely suffer. Although he didn't know how Ling Xiao had offended senior brother He Suo. Today's matter was just to teach Ling Xiao a lesson. It was too simple. Ling Xiao's cultivation had already ended, and he changed his martial soul avatar back to the mountain river world. His cultivation had already advanced to the early 9th level of the martial vein, but on the surface there was still no change. Of course, this was due to the model. He was now at the peak of the 8th level of the martial vein and could deal with most of the matters in the outer sect. For the time being, he didn't want to reveal his 9th level cultivation, so as to avoid being noticed by the flame deity. Ling Xiao keenly noticed that there was a person staring at him from about a mile away. He activated soul entry and looked into the distance. That person was He Suo. At this moment, He Suo was drinking tea while waiting to see Ling Xiao make a fool of himself. Li Anil had already begun to arrange the positions. Zhao Ji Suing and Zhao Xi's positions were not announced. It was said that there were other arrangements, so it was obvious that someone had informed them in advance. As for Zhao Ting and Zhao Yu, their positions were very relaxed and they had a lot of benefits. In fact, this was normal. Su Ying was a member of the Ninja Imperial family, and her talent was astonishing. Chapter 261. Although the jobs assigned to the other new outer sect disciples were not as good as these people, they were not bad either. At the very least, the tasks were relatively normal. There was no difficulty. However, when it came to Ling Xiao, the situation suddenly changed. Li Anil looked at Ling Xiao with a somewhat disdainful expression and said, "Ling Xiao, your job is to be a miner. You are responsible for helping the equipment hall collect iron ore. You have to collect at least 5,000 kilograms of iron ore every day. Do you understand? 5,000 kilograms. Those who are familiar with the Yuehua school's iron ore knew that even an ordinary miner hired by the outer sect could only collect 500 kilograms of iron ore a day. However, they had actually given Ling Xiao 5,000 kilograms of iron ore. This was even more than the amount given to Wu Xiang. in order to collect 2,500 kilograms of iron ore. Wu Xiang had to work through the night and even neglected his cultivation time. Ling Zhao's 5,000 kilograms was simply bullying. Many outer sect disciples who had a good relationship with Ling Xiao sympathized with Ling Xiao. However, no matter how much they sympathized, they did not dare to say anything. Why would the other party target Ling Xiao? Wasn't it simple? Ling Xiao injured Tian Chao. Someone was probably helping Tian Chao to take revenge. Their thinking was still relatively simple. In fact, if it was just Tian Chao, Jin Ming, Yang Cheng, and Li Anil would not easily offend him. However, this matter involved He Su'a and the flame deity, so the situation was very different. Su Ying looked at Ling Xiao and was clearly very happy. She absolutely hated Ling Xiao to the bone. Naturally, she was happy that Ling Xiao encountered a difficult task. Under the sympathetic and gloating gazes of the crowd, Ling Xiao slowly opened his mouth and said, "Senior brothers, unfortunately, I can't accept this job." "You can't accept it?" Jin Ming, Yang Qing, and Li Anil looked at each other. They were not angry but happy. This was because refusing to accept the job could be seen as violating the Yuehua school's rules. Next, they could make Ling Xiao suffer within the scope of the rules. "Are you sure you don't want to accept it?" Li Anil asked with a smile as he walked towards Ling Xiao. "Yes, I'm sure." Ling Xiao nodded. "The rules of the sect. Those who do not accept the job will be severely punished." Li Anil sneered and suddenly sped up. The so-called heavy punishment didn't have a specific standard, so he could do whatever he wanted as long as he didn't beat them to death or cripple them. When he was about 10 meters away from Ling Xiao, Li Anil suddenly jumped up. His movement technique was indeed very good, and his speed was also very fast. In the outer sect, in terms of movement techniques, he could definitely be ranked in the top 10. Jin Ming sat there without saying a word, a cold smile on his face. Yang Cheng's face revealed a sinister expression. He Su'a, who was further away, chuckled. Su Ying was so excited that she almost screamed. Li Anil was a half-step master. He was much stronger than Tian Chao. She believed that Ling Xiao would not be able to withstand Li Anil's attack. Quasi-gold grade martial technique? How dare you look down on me? Ling Xiao found that Li Anil only used a quasi-gold grade martial technique to deal with him. That was a gold grade beginner martial technique. He sneered. Since the Divine Hell King's Fist had been upgraded to a rare gold grade martial technique, he could test its power on Li Anil. Divine Hell King's Fist, kill! Ling Xiao didn't dodge or evade, only punching out. At that moment, red shadows appeared in Li Anil's eyes. It was as if countless ghosts were attacking him, and each of them had sharp claws and teeth. The terrifying, murderous aura caused his body to suddenly stop in midair, as if he was frozen. "Get lost!" Ling Xiao roared. Li Anil's body was sent flying. Then they saw Li Anil's pale face and trembling arms. "Ghost! Demon!" Li Anil shouted in horror. His strength was much stronger than Tian Chao's. Unfortunately, Ling Xiao's strength had also increased a lot. In addition to today's battle, he didn't take Ling Xiao seriously at all. In the end, he was beaten to the point where he lost the ability to fight. Although the injury did not seem serious, the mental injury was more troublesome than the physical injury. Seeing this, Jin Ming and Yang Chen both widened their eyes in shock. They knew Li Anil's strength. It was impossible for the two of them to defeat Li Anil in one move. Ling Xiao's combat strength was indeed as terrifying as the rumor said. He Suo was so angry that he smashed the teapot. "Idiot! I told you that Ling Xiao's combat skills are terrifying. How dare you underestimate him?" In his opinion, if Li Anil had not underestimated the enemy, he would never have suffered such a crushing defeat. The fact was just as he thought. Unfortunately, there was no if. "Ling Xiao, do you want to rebel? You disobeyed the arrangement and injured senior brother. What are you trying to do?" Jin Ming said angrily. Senior brother Jean, first of all, you have to understand that it's not that I disobeyed the arrangement. It's just that I've already been informed by the people in the medicinal hall to help them. It's this senior brother, Li, who suddenly attacked without asking, clearly. Ling Xiao said neither humbly nor overbearingly. He attacked rashly and was injured by me. It can only be said that he is not good enough. Why are you blaming me? Medicine hall? Yang Cheng snorted. So what if it's the medicine hall? Your work can only be arranged by us. Haha, is that so? Why don't you talk to Elder Yang of the medicine hall about this? If he agrees, I will absolutely obey the arrangement and go to the mine. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. So what if I go? Wait, did you just say Elder Yang? Old Hall Master Yang? Yang Cheng's face suddenly changed. That's right. Yesterday, Senior Marshal Brother Wu was injured by some dog. I took him to the medicine hall to treat his injuries. Elder Yang mentioned this matter and asked me to inform the deacon today. Who knew that the deacon didn't come today? Ling Xiao said helplessly. Both Jin Ming and Yang Cheng's faces became very ugly. In the distance, He Suo was so angry that he smashed the stone table. Su Ying almost spat out a mouthful of blood. She did not expect this result at all. What was this? Why could this Ling Xiao be treated so well by Old Hall Master Yang? Zhao Ji and Zhao Ci looked at Ling Xiao with surprise. They were all members of the royal family and had no grudges with Ling Xiao. When they heard this, they knew that Ling Xiao must have something extraordinary. Otherwise, with Elder Yang's picky personality, it was absolutely impossible for him to personally ask Ling Xiao to work in the medicine hall. After all, the two of them used a lot of connections to get a better position. Haha, since Old Hall Master Yang asked for you, you can go to the medicine hall. Yang Qing smiled, but his smile was very ugly. Thank you, senior brother. Ling Xiao cupped his hands and turned to walk to his stone house. Chapter 262. After the other new outer disciples had gone to report to their respective places, Yang Cheng looked at Jin Ming and said, Senior brother Jin, this Ling Xiao is not simple. Can we afford to offend him? What are you afraid of? He is just the disciple of the old man Bai Yin. We have the flame deity on our side. Why should we be afraid of him? At this time, Lianel had already recovered from the frightening illusion. He gnashed his teeth in hatred towards Ling Xiao, so he absolutely would not agree to let Ling Xiao go. Anil is right. This Ling Xiao is too arrogant. We must destroy his arrogance. Jin Ming also nodded. If that's what senior brother Jin thinks, I have a good idea. Yang Cheng suddenly smiled insidiously. What idea? Doesn't he live in the same stone house as Wu Xiang? As long as we ask Wu Xiang to put something in his water, no matter how powerful he is, he can only be trampled on. And Lu, you can take revenge however you want, as long as you don't kill or cripple him. Yang Cheng sneered. Isn't it a bit too insidious? Jin Ming frowned and said, Is it necessary for us to deal with a new outer disciple? Senior brother Jin, a real man doesn't care about trifles. You have seen how arrogant and despotic this person is. As half-step masters and top 10 outer disciples, if we provoke him directly, we will be suspected of bullying the weak. But if we ask Wu Xiang to do it, no one will know. Yang Cheng persuaded. Well, you are in charge of this matter. I want to go into secluded cultivation soon to see if I can break through to the transcendent realm. Jin Ming thought for a moment and said, Senior brother Jin is really diligent. I am afraid you will be the first to enter the inner sect. Don't forget us at that time. Lianel smiled. Of course. After that, Jin Ming also left. That afternoon, in the Yuehua School's iron mine. I really can't promise you. Junior brother Ling is good to me. I can't do that kind of thing. Wu Xiang was called to a remote place by Yang Cheng and Lianel. Anyway, Lianel was in charge of the iron mine. No one would say anything if he called someone. Bang! Li Anil kicked Wu Xiang's body and scolded. Trash, listen carefully. If you don't want to continue to be beaten in the future and don't want to continue to do such heavy work, do as we say. Yang Cheng squatted down beside Wu Xiang with a smile and said, What are you afraid of? It's not poison. It's just temporarily making him lose his power. We won't kill him. As long as you put this bag of medicine into his water, I guarantee that no one in the outer sect will dare to bully you again. Wu Xiang could only grit his teeth and persevere. Shameless thing. Yang Cheng's storm-like attacks directly greeted Wu Xiang. Wu Xiang did not resist. He only protected his vital parts and curled up his body. In any case, this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. He would just have to endure it for a while. However, things did not develop as he expected. This time, Yang Cheng and Li Anil seemed to have gone crazy. Their punches and kicks were not light at all. Wu Xiang's face grew paler and paler. In the end, his hands gradually gave up resisting and his body stopped moving. Stop! Yang Cheng suddenly stopped and used his finger to check Wu Xiang's breath. He's not breathing. No way. Li Anil was also shocked. Yang Cheng used his true yuan to check Wu Xiang's condition. He's really dead. Senior Brother Yang, what should we do? Although he's just an outer disciple, it's hard to explain his death, Li Anil said worriedly. Don't worry. No one will care if an outer disciple dies. Yang Cheng shook his head and said, In the eyes of ordinary people, the Yuehua school is like a carp leaping over the dragon's gate. Although it's true, outer disciples can't do it. Most of the time, they do odd jobs unless they enter the inner sect. I think Senior Brother Heisua also said that it's not a big deal if 1 or 2 outer disciples die, as long as there's someone in charge. The higher-ups will definitely not pursue it. Li Anil suddenly woke up and thought of Heisua's words. Yes, only by becoming an inner disciple, like Senior Brother Heisua, can you be considered a carp leaping over the dragon's gate. Not only will you be protected by the sect, but you will also get more resources. Unlike now, ordinary outer disciples can only receive 10 low-grade spirit stones and 10 spirit pills a month. Yang Cheng nodded. In fact, compared to the outside world, such a salary was already a lot. Low-grade spirit stones were very precious. The key was that these 10 spirit pills were said to be more effective than the best spirit pills in the secular world. The Qian Yuan bone-changing pill, which was regarded as a treasure by Master Bai Yun, was not ranked in the Yuehua school's spirit pills. In the dark night, Wu Xiang was thrown into the mountains by Yang Cheng and Li Anil. Why do I feel so uneasy? Ling Xiao was cultivating, but he couldn't calm down. As usual, Wu Xiang didn't come back. He couldn't help but look at the bed. I have to find a chance to transfer Senior Brother Wu back from the mine. This person is really good. He thought for a moment and walked out of the stone house. Originally, he wanted to look at the scenery, but after entering the soul imprint state, he unexpectedly saw a scene that made him angry. Yang Cheng and Li Anil threw Wu Xiang's body and kicked it a few times. Senior Brother Yang, let's not use the drug. Just like how we dealt with Wu Xiang, let's get rid of Ling Xiao. Li Anil laughed. Let's not touch Ling Xiao for the time being. We have to figure out his relationship with Old Hall Master Yang. That old man is a very protective person. If we kill Ling Xiao and provoke him to come out of seclusion, then this matter will be big. Yang Cheng shook his head and said, This kid is really lucky. He can actually get the attention of Old Hall Master Yang. It really makes people jealous. Well, let's not talk about this. Let's go back quickly. Be careful not to be seen by others. Yang Cheng called Li Anil, and the two quickly left in the direction of the iron mine. The place where the body was dumped was 5 or 6 miles away from the iron mine. Moreover, there were many wild beasts in the forest. There were also demon beasts and even fierce beasts. They believed that Wu Xiang's body would soon disappear. Bastard! Ling Xiao angrily cursed. He sped up and rushed to the place where Wu Xiang's body was dumped. No matter what, Wu Xiang was his junior brother. Moreover, Wu Xiang was really good to him. He couldn't just watch this person's body be left in the wilderness to be eaten by wild beasts. Ling Xiao, who used the cloud dragon divine travel to the extreme, was so fast that it was impossible to see him. If the outer sect disciples saw him at this time, they would be so shocked that their jaws would drop. Senior brother Wu. Fortunately, his speed was fast enough. When he arrived, no wild beasts had approached Wu Xiang's body. His body is still warm. Ling Xiao touched Wu Xiang's body. Then he released his soul force into Wu Xiang's body. Chapter 263. When Ling Xiao's soul force entered Wu Xiang's body, he suddenly discovered that there were two souls in the depths of Wu Xiang's brain. One of the weaker souls was Wu Xiang. The other one was filled with ruthless aura and was extremely powerful. It was actually Wu Xiang. However, this powerful soul had been sealed, as if it was imprisoned in a cage. The weaker soul, other than retaining some memories, was basically about to dissipate. Ling Xiao hurriedly wrapped her with his soul force. "Kid, you can actually enter here. Are you from the soul race?" Suddenly the soul in the cage asked. "Senior brother Wu, don't joke around. Of course I'm a human. It's just that my soul is stronger." Ling Xiao said, "Do you have a way to open this seal? As long as you open the seal, I can come back to life." The soul said. Ling Xiao observed the situation of the seal. In fact, the seal had already loosened. Using his mountain river martial spirits analysis ability, he estimated that he would be able to open the seal in about half an hour. However, he was a little worried. The soul in the cage was too ruthless. There must be a reason why it was sealed. If something went wrong, then things might go out of control. "I do have a way, but you have to tell me why you were sealed." Ling Xiao asked, "Why are you talking so much nonsense? Do you believe that I won't kill you?" "Ruthless indeed. However, you're just a soul now. Can you kill me?" Ling Xiao said with disdain. He suddenly thought of a sealing profound in the God Investiture catalog. It was called Forbidden Magic Seal. Strictly speaking, this was also a type of martial art. It belonged to the category of auxiliary martial arts. It could seal a martial artist's heart demon. "I have a way." He studied the anti-devil seal and realized that he didn't need to release the ruthless soul completely. Instead, he could add another layer of the seal and slowly release the soul inside. This way, Wu Xiang wouldn't become so ruthless in an instant. Forbidden Magic Seal. Ling Xiao released his soul and sent it into Wu Xiang's brain. Then, he used the anti-magic seal to reinforce the cage. However, he released a small group of souls, which merged with the weaker soul in his hand. Then, his soul left Wu Xiang's brain and returned to his own body. From the outside, it could be seen that Wu Xiang's body was emitting a blood-red light. After a long time, he suddenly opened his eyes. The moment Wu Xiang opened his eyes, his gaze became much colder than before. "Thank you for saving me, junior brother Ling." Wu Xiang immediately knelt on the ground. Although his soul was very weak before, he still knew what Ling Xiao had done. He knew very well that it was Ling Xiao who had saved him. "It's good that senior martial brother Wu is alive. What's going on? Are Yangcheng and Li Anil crazy? They actually want to kill you? And what's with the sealed soul in your body?" Ling Xiao asked. "We'll talk about it when we get back." The two of them returned to the stone house. Wu Xiang told Ling Xiao about how he was forced to drug Ling Xiao. After listening, Ling Xiao wanted to kill him. Since Yangcheng and Li Anil wanted to die, then he didn't need to be polite. "Junior martial brother Ling, leave Li Anil and Yangcheng's lives to me." Wu Xiang said coldly, "Junior martial brother Ling saw the sealed soul in my body, right? That's actually my original self. I won't say the details. What you did was right. My past was too violent and cruel. I can't completely release it. Otherwise, it won't be easy to deal with. So that's how it is. Ling Xiao thoughtfully nodded and said, All right, I'll leave the lives of those two to you. However, I have to vent my anger first. Otherwise, I'll feel suffocated. This time, you were almost beaten to death because of me. No, you were really dead. That's up to you. Now that my past soul has been released, my cultivation will increase very quickly. Or rather, it's just returning to my previous level. Killing those two people won't be a problem, but it will take some time. Wu Xiang nodded. Senior Martial Brother Wu, can I ask what realm you were in before? Ling Xiao suddenly asked curiously. The peak of the celestial being realm, the 10 directions heaven realm. Wu Xiang was silent for a while before he answered. Oh my God! Ling Xiao couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. There were 10 realms in the celestial being realm, and the 10 directions heaven was the highest realm. It was probably the realm that only the strongest person in the Yuehua school could reach. It should be noted that there were no experts above the celestial being realm on the Tianlong continent. Don't tell anyone about this, okay? Wu Xiang said. Don't worry, Senior Martial Brother Wu. I won't. Ling Xiao would never have thought that he would unintentionally save such a ferocious person. He believed that from today on, Wu Xiang's cultivation would improve by leaps and bounds, even faster than the top geniuses, because he was just recovering, not cultivating. If he became his backer, he would be excited just thinking about it. However, what he needed to do now was to vent his anger and make trouble for Yangcheng and Lianel. How to make trouble for them was a technical job. Ling Xiao, among the outer court disciples, the top 30 are all given special treatment. After the 30th place, no matter what your rank is, your monthly salary will be the same. But for the top 30, every time you rise by 1 rank, you will receive an increase in your salary of 1 mid-grade spirit stone and 1 elixir. So I suggest that instead of teaching Yangcheng and Lianel a lesson in private, it's better to challenge them openly. Challenge them openly? Yes, go to the outer hall to find Elder Bai and submit the letter of challenge. Wu Xiang nodded. As long as Elder Bai agrees, they can't refuse. That's a good idea, but it's a little troublesome. Ling Xiao really wanted to make trouble for those two now. It's a little troublesome, but there are many benefits. The key is that it's justified, and they can't find any other reason to blame you. Wu Xiang laughed. Well, I'll listen to you, Senior Martial Brother Wu. I'll go to Elder by tomorrow morning. The next morning, Ling Xiao really went to the outer hall and submitted a challenge application to Elder Bai. Wait a moment, I need to ask Lianel and Yangcheng if there's anything important. This challenge was not something that could be casually decided. For example, Jean Ming was currently in closed-door training. If someone submitted a challenge application, the outer hall would definitely not approve it. A moment later, Yangcheng and Lianel arrived at the outer hall. After Elder Bai roughly explained the matter, Lianel and Yangcheng both happily agreed. Lianel was eager to regain his lost face. He always thought that he lost to Ling Xiao because he underestimated him. As for Yangcheng, he could teach Ling Xiao a lesson without being blamed by Old Hall Master Yang. Such a good opportunity, why would he refuse? Well, since both of you can accept the challenge, I'll approve this challenge application. Elder Bai waved his pen and settled it. Then he said, in principle, both sides of the challenge must give a certain reward. Generally, the reward is an item of equal value or something else. Elder Bai, I'll give 10 top-grade true elemental pills as the reward. Yangcheng said, top-grade true elemental pills were only the most common spirit pills in the Yuehua school, but they were much better than the high-grade true elemental pills in the secular world. Poor Ling Xiao, when he was in the secular world, obtaining a high-grade true elemental pill was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. I'll use this precious artifact as the prize. Lianel's reward was a long spear, a treasure, which was even better than Ling Xiao's floating snow sword. Generally, only transcendent realm cultivators were qualified to use it. Lianel himself did not use the long spear, so he used it as the reward. Although Ling Xiao did not use the long spear, he could use it as a material to smelt a new sword. Chapter 264. Yang Cheng's wager was 10 top-grade true elemental dawn. Lianel's wager was a treasure spear. It could be said that these two wagers were very heavy. Ling Xiao, if you can't take out any decent wager, then so be it. Yang Cheng looked at Ling Xiao contemptuously and said, "If you lose, you will be our servant. If we tell you to go east, you will go east. If we tell you to go west, you will go west. How about it?" Ling Xiao smiled and said, "Hee, just based on the wager of the two of you, you're not worthy of me betting my own fate. Unless you can take out more than 10,000 top-grade true elemental dawn or a divine grade artifact, I can consider it." He was not afraid of gambling, but in a gambling fight, the value of the wager had to be equivalent. If he used himself to gamble, it would be a bit degrading. If you don't dare to gamble, then don't dare to gamble. Saying so much nonsense, as if you can really take out any decent wager. Lianel coldly snorted. Ling Xiao only smiled and did not say anything. He directly waved his hand, and a 1,000-year golden snow lotus appeared in his hand. I wonder if this thing is enough as a wager. 1,000-year golden snow lotus. Before Yang Cheng and Lianel could say anything, Elder Bai suddenly stood up and said in surprise, "It's enough. It's definitely enough. This 1,000-year-old golden snow lotus is slightly more valuable than what the two of them have offered." Hearing Elder Bai's words, Yang Cheng and Lianel's faces became a bit ugly. They really did not expect that Ling Xiao would actually have such a treasure. Ling Xiao thought to himself, "Brother, I still have a lot of treasures. For such a long time, many medicinal herbs and monster beasts have been cultivated in the mountain river world. It's just that there's not enough time, and I'm too lazy to take them out." Whether it was medicinal herbs or monster beasts, the longer they were grown, the more valuable they were. This was a well-known fact in the profound world. 1,000-year golden snow lotus that had only grown a year ago was too rare. Now that Ling Xiao's mountain river martial soul had risen to the 9th grade, he had obtained a new special ability, Mountain River Ruler. This ability was also the last special ability that the Mountain River martial spirit could give Ling Xiao. According to the description of the Mountain River diagram, although the Mountain River martial spirit would continue to level up in the future, it would only strengthen the existing 9 abilities and would not add any new ones. Ling Xiao took a closer look at the Mountain River Ruler ability. It meant that he could control everything in the world. However, his current ability level was relatively low. The effect he could achieve was to guide part of the natural energy between heaven and earth to cooperate with his own true essence to attack. In addition, it could absorb natural energy and promote the growth of plants and animals in the mountain river world. This was even better than before. Any plant or animal that grew in the mountain river world for a day was equivalent to 10 years in the outside world. Take the gold snow lotus as an example. A gold snow lotus seedling only needed to grow for 100 days in the mountain river world to become a 1,000-year snow lotus. Moreover, this promotion was only temporary. As Ling Xiao's strength increased and the level of his mountain river martial soul increased, the promotion effect would be even better. That was not the best part. The best part was that the animals and plants in the mountain river world would not age after reaching maturity. No matter how many years passed, it was the same. In other words, it was absolutely possible for Ling Xiao to cultivate a 10,000-year demonic beast. It was a pity that this ability could not be used on intelligent races for the time being, such as humans and the blue-eyed race. Otherwise, Ling Xiao would be able to achieve immortality to a certain extent. But even in this situation, being able to cultivate a 1,000-year snow lotus in 100 days was still Ling Xiao's absolute capital. Why did he agree to join the medicine hall and help Elder Yang, other than not being willing to offend Elder Yang? This was actually the key. Well, since you can take out this 1,000-year gold snow lotus, let's set a date for the challenge. Although they were unhappy in their hearts, Yang Cheng and Li Anil also coveted the 1,000-year gold snow lotus very much. If they could win this thing and go to the medicine hall to ask the alchemist to help refine it into an elixir, it would be much better than a top-grade true elemental dan. Therefore, they naturally agreed to this challenge. How about this? I have just joined the Yuehua school and still have some private matters to deal with, especially the medicine hall. Give me a day. How about we have a public challenge the day after tomorrow? Ling Xiao thought for a while and said, Why? You want to challenge 2 people at once? Elder Bai was stunned for a moment and asked, Yes. Ling Xiao nodded. Elder Bai frowned, thinking that Ling Xiao was too arrogant. However, he did not have a close relationship with Ling Xiao, so he did not care. He said indifferently, In that case, let's challenge the day after tomorrow. I will send out the notice today. Agreed. Yang Cheng and Li Anil also nodded. Since Ling Xiao did not know what was good for him and wanted to challenge 2 people at once, they would not care. Okay. The day after tomorrow morning, the challenge will be held at the outer court challenge platform. If no one is there by noon, it will be regarded as a breach of contract, and the prize will be given to the other party. Elder Bai reminded. Yes. After discussing the challenge, the 3 of them returned to their own places. Not long after Ling Xiao returned, Elder Bai announced his public challenge to Li Anil and Yang Cheng. In the square, the notice board was very clear in black and white. Ha ha ha, interesting. This Ling Xiao not only dares to challenge a half-step master, but he also dares to challenge 2 half-step masters at once. I have never seen such a crazy person. A lot of people gathered around the notice board. There were new outer court disciples, but more of them were old outer court disciples. No one believed that Ling Xiao could challenge 2 half-step masters at once. Many of the new outer court disciples were worried about Ling Xiao, thinking that Ling Xiao was too impulsive. Of course, there were also people who were gloating, such as Suing. As for the old outer court disciples, they were looking forward to seeing Ling Xiao make a fool of himself. Second brother, this Ling Xiao is really overestimating himself. He was able to defeat Li Anil that day purely because Li Anil underestimated him. Yang Cheng is more than 10 times stronger than Li Anil. How dare he challenge Yang Cheng? Is he crazy? Standing in front of the notice board, Zhao Xi said helplessly. This girl was kind by nature, and it was rare for her to be so kind even in the royal family. Therefore, she was more puzzled about Ling Xiao. Maybe he is really confident. Anyway, I think this Ling Xiao is quite capable. Zhao Ji smiled and said, And no matter whether he succeeds or not, he will be a reference for us. Sooner or later, we will challenge the top 30. It will be a waste not to take advantage of such benefits. Alas! Zhao Xi sighed and turned to leave. According to the rules, all outer court disciples could challenge the top 30, but they could only do so once a month. Once they failed, they could only challenge again after a year. Therefore, although Zhao Ji had been itching for a fight, he had not done so because he was not fully confident. Chapter 265. For Zhao Ji and Suing. Ling Zhao's stupid move was a great help. They could use this opportunity to see how strong the top 30 outer disciples were. In fact, in the Yuehua school, the top 30 outer disciples were also called quasi-inner disciples. This was not an official title, but everyone called them that. After all, the top 30 were all half-step masters, and they received more resources than those below 30. They also had more opportunities to receive guidance from the outer sect elders. Naturally, their chances of promotion were greatly increased. It was not an exaggeration to call them quasi-inner disciples. In the outer sect, everyone wanted to become a quasi-inner disciple. Zhao Ji, Suing, and Zhao Xi were no exception. Ling Xiao did not care about the outside world's comments. The reason why he chose Li Anil and Yang Cheng was not entirely for revenge. In fact, he also wanted to use them as a reference. Especially Yang Cheng, who was ranked in the top 10. If he fought with him, he could roughly judge the strength of the top 10 outer disciples. After that, he would have more confidence to challenge stronger disciples. Although he had advanced to the early stage of the 9th stage of the martial vein, he did not plan to use his cultivation this time. He planned to challenge with the peak of the 8th stage of the martial vein. The greater the pressure, the greater the improvement. This was Ling Xiao's experience. Junior brother Ling, I will be leaving for a period of time. It just so happens that Yang Cheng and Li Anil think that I am dead. I can use this opportunity to go into seclusion and cultivate. I cannot accept your challenge. Wu Xiang had already thought about it. Since the seal had been opened, there was no need to continue hiding. He used to think that by being a good person he would be safe. That was why he asked an expert to seal his essence soul. But now, it seemed that the world was not as beautiful as he had imagined. Therefore, he did not care anymore. Even if he became bloodthirsty, it did not matter. He believed that no matter what, he would not hurt Ling Xiao. Even if he used to be bloodthirsty, he would not hurt his friends or family. But is it okay to not show up for a long time? Ling Xiao asked. Outer sect disciples aren't that precious. Look, Cold Plum disappeared for a few days. Did anyone care? Wu Xiang sighed and said, as long as an outer sect disciple doesn't disappear for more than 10 years, no one will care. Even if you disappear for more than 10 years, your name will be cancelled. Of course, during the time you disappear, your salary will be stopped. So that's how it is. Looks like old man Baiyun was right. Outer sect disciples in Yuehua school are just a bunch of stinky cheese. No one will care about them. Ling Xiao sighed. That day, Wu Xiang left the Yuehua school. He must have gone somewhere to cultivate. Ling Xiao did not have to worry about him. He tidied up a little and left the stone house to report to the medicine hall. Disciples like him, who had been personally requested by the medicine hall master to work in the medicine hall, would live in the medicine hall. After all, the medicine hall also had its own house, which was much better than the stone house where the outer disciples lived. Zhao, Ji, Zhao Xi, and Su Ying also had the same privilege. Dai Yuling probably had the same privilege. The other disciples were not so lucky. Hall Master Yang really valued Ling Xiao very much. When he went to the medicine hall, Hall Master Yang smiled and handed over the matters at hand to his subordinates. Then he took him to visit the various branches of the medicine hall. The Yuehua School's medicine hall included the Medicine Mountain, the Beast Mountain, the Alchemy Room, the Medicine Hall, and so on. Anyway, there were more than 10 branches, which really opened Ling Xiao's eyes. Along the way, Hall Master Yang did not stop talking about the benefits of being an alchemist and alchemist to Ling Xiao. He said that he would be respected by countless people, become the hope of the sect's future, and have a meteoric rise. Ling Xiao only responded vaguely. In his heart, no matter how good an alchemist was, he was at most a service staff. If he learned alchemy and alchemy, it would be used as a support to improve his own cultivation. It would not be his main profession. As long as it did not affect his cultivation, there was nothing wrong with becoming an alchemist. Greetings, Hall Master Yang. Greetings, Elder Yang. Greetings, Elder Yang. Along the way, there were always people who came to greet Hall Master Yang. These people were respectful to Hall Master Yang on the surface, but it was unknown what they were thinking. Perhaps some people respected him from the bottom of their hearts. Some people just did not want to offend Hall Master Yang, so that no one would take care of them when they were sick or injured. There were also some people who just wanted to get the pills refined by Hall Master Yang, so they were respectful on the surface. As for what they were thinking in their hearts, who knew? Hall Master Yang did not seem to care much about these people's attitudes. He was used to these people's flattery and knew what they were thinking, so he just smiled. The puppy next to him was lying on his shoulder, still dozing off. He did not know why this little guy was so sleepy. It was as if it could never sleep enough. Of course, many people also noticed Ling Xiao. Isn't that the new disciple who publicly challenged Yang Cheng and Lianel? Why is he walking with Hall Master Yang? They seemed to be quite familiar with each other. The people who said this were naturally outer disciples. These outer disciples were already satisfied to be able to get a job in the medicinal hall, even if it was just a hard job. This was because the air in the medicinal hall was full of spirit energy. If they worked for a long time, their cultivation would improve faster. What they did not understand was how a new disciple could come to the medicinal hall and was personally greeted by Hall Master Yang. Could that kid be Hall Master Yang's relative in the secular world? Forget it. I've never heard of Hall Master Yang having relatives in the secular world. Do you know how old he is? Even if he has relatives, he probably doesn't know them. Is that the new disciple of Hall Master Yang? No way. Hall Master Yang is very strict when it comes to accepting disciples. How can a new outer disciple like him be accepted? Even many geniuses in the inner sect who wanted to be his disciple were rejected. Then what do you think is going on? The discussion behind him was very soft, but everyone's envious and jealous gazes were real. Ling Xiao was actually able to receive such high regard from old Master Yang of the medicine hall. Even if he wasn't a disciple, his position definitely wasn't low. Over there is the Herb Mountain. This mountain is full of spirit energy and is most suitable for the growth of all kinds of medicinal materials. Before long, Hall Master Yang brought Ling Xiao to the Herb Mountain. Ling Xiao looked at the mountain range with more than a dozen rolling hills and thought of Dai Yuling. These days he had been busy with his own affairs and did not come to the Herb Mountain to see Dai Yuling. After all, she was his senior sister who had been with him since they were in the latent dragon camp. Chapter 266. Ling Xiao. Just as he was thinking, he suddenly heard a voice. Ling Xiao could tell that it was definitely Dai Yuling's voice. At this time, Dai Yuling was learning how to use martial spirits to cultivate herbs from a beautiful senior sister. Today, Ling Xiao found out that Dai Yuling's martial spirit was actually a spiritual herb. He couldn't tell the specific name. However, what surprised him was that the spiritual herb that was originally a broken martial spirit had now become a complete martial spirit. Although it was still transparent, it made Dai Yuling's strength much stronger than before. Dai Yuling. Ling Xiao and Dai Yuling were used to calling each other by their names, so they didn't feel anything wrong. On the contrary, the beautiful senior sister beside her frowned slightly. Old Hall Master Yang, is this the genius you were talking about? Lan Yu. Don't look down on him. This child's perception is high. I'm afraid it's even better than yours. Lan Yu's age was estimated to be 16 or 17 years old. She might not be much older than Ling Xiao, but her cultivation was frighteningly high. Ling Xiao couldn't tell what realm she was in, but he estimated that it wouldn't be lower than Heisu. Is that so? Lan Yu glanced at Ling Xiao. There was no color in her cold eyes. There was no contempt, but there was no surprise. It was as if she didn't care at all. Ling Xiao had seen this kind of gaze before. It was absolute confidence and strength. It was as if she didn't put anyone in her eyes. It wasn't targeted at Ling Xiao. However, she ignored Ling Xiao, and Ling Xiao was too lazy to pay attention to her. It was true that she was a beauty, but Ling Xiao really didn't want to make friends with a block of ice. How unpleasant would that be? Ling Xiao, I didn't expect you to have a talent in medicine. I really didn't see it before, Dai Yuling said in surprise. You two know each other? Old Hall Master Yang glanced at Ling Xiao and asked. She and I are both martial artists from Baiyun province. We used to be fellow disciples, Ling Xiao explained. Hall Master Yang, this junior brother of mine is too powerful. When he first came to the latent dragon camp, his cultivation was much lower than mine. But now his cultivation has surpassed mine. I have to say that he is the most perceptive martial artist I have ever seen. You have a good eye. Dai Yuling seemed to know old Hall Master Yang, so she spoke casually. In fact, Ling Xiao didn't know that Dai Yuling was also requested by old Hall Master Yang and senior martial sister Lan Yu. Naturally, they already knew each other. "You Ling, there's no need to feel inferior. Learn well under me. With your cultivation, you can only surpass him." Lan Yu suddenly said. This woman was indeed arrogant. She could not tolerate others surpassing her, and she actually could not tolerate others surpassing her disciple. Lan Yu's status in Yuehua school was definitely not low. She was only 16 or 17 years old, yet she was already qualified to accept disciples. "Oh, I forgot to introduce you. This is your senior martial sister, Lan Yu. She's amazing. She's only 16 years old, but she's already a transcendent 9th-layer cultivator. She's also very talented in medicine, so she's now one of the Vice Hall Masters of the Medicine Hall." Old Hall Master Yang smiled and introduced Ling Xiao to him. Heavens, did this girl start cultivating when she was in her mother's womb? 9th-layer transcendent realm cultivation. She's not much worse than Old Hall Master Yang. She's probably one of the best among the inner disciples. Although this woman is arrogant, she has a reason to be. He raised his head and looked at Lan Yu, again with a hint of admiration. He would not lower his head for beauty, but he would never be stingy with his admiration for those who were truly capable. Senior Martial Sister Lan is a true genius. I'm sorry for making a fool of myself. Ling Xiao cupped his fists and said, "It's good that you know." Lan Yu said lightly before asking, "Old Hall Master Yang has always praised your perception in front of me, and even you Ling always praises you, but alchemy is a profound subject. It's not something you can learn just by studying it. If you're only interested in it, I advise you to give up on it as soon as possible." Ling Xiao smiled and said, "Senior Martial Sister doesn't need to worry about that. Although I, Ling Xiao, have never come into contact with alchemy, and I don't understand anything about medicine, I'm still confident that nothing can stop me." He wasn't bragging. With his mountain and river martial spirit, nothing could stop him. As long as he was willing to learn, his attainments wouldn't be worse than anyone present. It was only a matter of time. Lan Yu frowned. She didn't like Ling Xiao's tone, as if alchemy were easy. If it was so easy, there wouldn't be only a few alchemists in the world. "Old Hall Master Yang, why do I feel that your apprentice is a little impetuous? He doesn't know anything about medicine, but he dares to boast so shamelessly. Are you really going to accept him as your apprentice?" Lan Yu looked at Old Hall Master Yang and asked. "Not yet." Old Hall Master Yang replied, "That's good. Old Hall Master Yang, you're quite cautious." Lan Yu nodded and felt that it was normal. "Little Lan, you misunderstood. I'm not being cautious. It's just that this kid refuses to acknowledge me as his master. I have no choice but to accept him as my apprentice for the time being." Old Hall Master Yang sighed and said, "To be honest, I'm not qualified to be his master." What? Lan Yu had always been very calm, but now she was obviously very surprised. Who was Old Hall Master Yang? He was the most outstanding apothecary in the Yuehua sect. If he was not qualified to teach Ling Xiao alchemy and medicine refinement, who else was qualified to do so? Old Hall Master Yang, your joke is a bit too much. This Ling Xiao's potential isn't as good as several of his peers, and his strength isn't strong either. What qualifications does he have to refuse to be your apprentice? What is he relying on? Lan Yu couldn't help but raise her voice. Hee, little Lan, you're really not convinced. I've seen countless geniuses. In terms of cultivation, they might be much stronger than this kid. But in terms of perception, if he says he's second, no one would dare to say they're first. Even I wouldn't dare to say so. Such a good seedling, I don't want to scare him away. It's fine if he doesn't want to acknowledge me as his master. I'm willing to accept it. Old Hall Master Yang laughed. Lan Yu was dumbfounded. Anyway, with her eyesight and experience, she couldn't see what was so special about Ling Xiao. But this was normal. Although she was powerful, she was only 16 years old. Compared to old Hall Master Yang, her experience were far behind. Could it be that this kid really had something special? Thinking of this, Lan Yu was a little more interested in Ling Xiao. Of course, it was just a little bit of interest. Whether this person was worthy of her attention or not depended on his performance in the future. Little Lan, I brought Ling Xiao here today to let him familiarize himself with the environment. On the other hand, I'll have to trouble you to give him some pointers. You know that I'm too busy. I don't have time to teach him the basics. Old Hall Master Yang said with a smile. Chapter 267. Ling Xiao doesn't understand pharmacology at all. I think you should start from the most basic pharmacology, fire control technique, basic alchemy technique, and basic alchemy technique. If there is anything you don't understand, you can ask me. Novel, Lan Yu didn't refuse the request of old Hall Master Yang, but she also put forward some suggestions. It was because old Hall Master Yang was kind to her, and she also needed a male disciple to handle some physical work. Of course, more importantly, Lan Yu had a little interest in Ling Xiao. She really wanted to see what kind of skills this genius, who was praised by old Hall Master Yang like a flower, had. Well, Ling Xiao, you will learn from Lan Yu for the time being. When the foundation is almost there, I will teach you more advanced alchemy and alchemy techniques. After saying that, old Hall Master Yang turned around and left. He really didn't worry about Lan Yu. That's great, Ling Xiao. We can cultivate together again in the future. Dai Yuling said heartlessly. What are you happy about? Have you understood everything I taught you? Lan Yu looked at Dai Yuling and said. Dai Yuling stuck out her tongue and hurriedly turned around to get busy. You come with me. After that, Lan Yu took Ling Xiao to the medicine hall's library. There were no martial arts secret books here, but there were a lot of alchemy and alchemy books. Good heavens, along the way, Lan Yu's chance of attracting attention was 100%, regardless of whether it was a man or a woman. As long as Lan Yu walked past, there would be people turning their heads. Some were appreciative, but most of them were infatuated. But when they saw Ling Xiao, their eyes became sharp, as if Ling Xiao had offended them. Who is that kid? Why is he with senior sister Lan Yu? I haven't seen him before. He should be a new outer disciple. It turns out that senior sister Lan Yu likes little fresh meat. Hey, aren't we a little old? Good cabbages have been eaten by pigs. Hearing such discussions, Ling Xiao could only sigh. This was simply an unexpected disaster. You guys really like this popsicle? When they arrived at the medicinal hall's library, Lan Yu picked a few books from the bookshelf. In addition to the ones she had introduced before, there was also a book called Compendium of Spiritual Herbs and a book called Illustrated Handbook of Spiritual Beasts. Don't underestimate this Compendium of Spiritual Herbs and Illustrated Handbook of Spiritual Beasts. These are the basics of alchemy and medicine refining. The Compendium of Spiritual Herbs records the medicinal properties, growth characteristics, and how to identify the various spiritual herbs that have been discovered so far. Lan Yu handed the book to Ling Xiao and introduced it to him. The other book, Illustrated Handbook of Spirit Beasts, has detailed information about various spirit beasts that can be used as medicine and the parts that can be used as medicine, including their medicinal properties and so on. Got it. Ling Xiao nodded. Not only do I have to know, but I also have to try my best to remember everything in these two books. Lan Yu emphasized. There were other disciples who were also choosing books nearby. Most of them were from the inner sect. When they heard this, they couldn't help but smile bitterly. Did you see that? Junior sister Lan is messing with people again. Yeah, even if you want to memorize just one of the two books, you won't be able to do it without more than 10 years. Moreover, you have to have a very good memory, not to mention 2 books. Yeah, I heard that junior sister Lan seems to have only memorized 70% of the contents. The rest is just familiar. Sigh, that unlucky kid. How did he offend Junior's sister Lan? He's really unlucky. Ling Xiao had heard these discussions, but he didn't say anything. He just laughed in his heart. Lan you or should want me to back off. Of course. She also wanted to test me. Don't worry, senior sister Lan. I will definitely give you a surprise. He smiled and didn't leave. He found a seat and sat down. Then he quickly began to read the books that Lan Yu brought. Basic Pharmacology, Fire Control Technique, Basic Alchemy Technique, Basic Medicine Refining Technique. In a moment, he had already copied the contents of these 4 books. Of course, copying was just the beginning. The contents of the books that were copied into the mountain river martial soul would be integrated into his soul. This was more reliable than memorizing the contents. Except for the fire control technique, the other 3 books were very easy to understand. In the state of soul imprint, he had already understood them in less than a quarter of an hour. The fire control technique was a little more difficult. It talked about how to control the fire in the process of alchemy and medicine refining. The content was very complicated and detailed. Every medicinal herb required exquisite control of the type and size of the flame. If he wanted to fully master it, he really had to memorize the contents of the Compendium of Spiritual Herbs and the Illustrated Handbook of Spiritual Beasts. This way, he could control the flame according to the special characteristics of the medicinal herbs. Otherwise, it would be easy to make mistakes. Outer disciples weren't qualified to read these 2 books. However, since Ling Xiao was old Hall Master Yang's man and was brought here by Lan Yu, the person in charge of the library didn't dare to stop him. The 2 books had a lot of pictures and very complicated text information. It even involved a lot of arithmetic problems. To be honest, when Ling Xiao opened these 2 books, he knew that what the inner disciples said was true. These 2 books looked thin, but in fact they used a special sealing method. If they were processed according to the method of ordinary books, the contents inside would be more than a 100 square meter house. Seeing Ling Xiao's stunned expression, Lan Yu's mouth slipped into a smug smile. However, the next moment she was dumbfounded. The inner disciples who sang the sad music for Ling Xiao were also dumbfounded. Ling Xiao wasn't reading the books. He was just looking at the flowers on horseback. He just casually flipped through them and stopped. Junior brother Ling, it doesn't matter if you can't remember them. I didn't ask you to remember them now. As long as you can remember them all in 10 years, it will be good enough. Lan Yu said coldly. Ling Xiao smiled and simply closed the books. Then he returned all the books. That kid is smart. He knows that he can't do it, so he admits defeat. Otherwise, he will suffer later. This is called having self-awareness. Yes, there is really no need to compare himself with a genius like Junior Sister Lan. Otherwise, he will die of anger. When the inner sect disciples saw that Ling Xiao had returned the book, they all praised him greatly. They felt that Ling Xiao's action was a smart one. However, Ling Xiao didn't have time to listen to their praise. In his mind, Ling Xiao was repeatedly recalling the contents of the 2 books. It was too surprising. No wonder the outer disciples weren't allowed to read these 2 books. It was estimated that a lot of people worked hard to compile these 2 books. Many medicinal herbs and spirit beasts were recorded in them. In fact, they were very common things, but if you didn't understand them, you would think that they were rubbish. Chapter 268. In these 2 books, in addition to most of the common herbs and spirit beasts, there were many mystical items that Ling Xiao had never seen or even heard of before. For example, Master Bai Yun once said that a person's potential was not static. It could be improved through external objects, such as some spiritual herbs, but these spiritual herbs were very difficult to obtain. In this book, there was a spiritual herb called treasure fruit. Its name was ordinary, but this fruit could slowly improve a martial artist's potential all the way to a divine treasure body. In addition, there were also strange spiritual herbs, spiritual items, and spirit beasts. For example, there was a spiritual herb called phoenix grass. After a martial artist consumed it, he could obtain a chance to be reborn from the ashes. Then there was the blood of a certain primordial beast. After consuming or absorbing it, the blood in the body could undergo some special changes and obtain the terrifying power of the primordial beast. This made Ling Xiao think of the golden dragon bloodline in his body. He had always guessed that this thing should be the blood of some primordial divine dragon, but it had never been confirmed. But today he finally got confirmation from the illustrated handbook of spiritual beasts. The worries in his heart were gone. Not only that, but there were also some herbs that could help awaken the golden dragon bloodline, which would be of great help to Ling Xiao. In addition to herbs and spirit beasts, there were some spiritual items, such as the preserved blood of primordial martial artists and items that contain the remnant souls of primordial martial artists. Using these items to refine pills, after consuming them, there was a possibility of obtaining the martial soul of a primordial martial artist or magical powers. For example, martial souls such as Moonlight Pagoda, Blood Dissipating Sword, Golden Buddha, Book of the Chaos, and so on. There were also magical powers such as 3-head 6 arms, Call the Wind and Summon the Rain, Heavenly Dipper, Earthly Fiend Transformation, and so on. Ling Xiao had never thought that a martial artist could become so powerful and have the power to fight against heaven and earth. This was too shocking. These 2 books had opened up a whole new world for him, making him completely determined to learn from old Hall Master Yang. Previously, he still had the idea of mingling around, only feeling that the work here was easier and that no one would suppress him. But now his mentality had completely changed. Concocting pills and practicing martial arts had to go hand in hand. There was no distinction between the two. In any case, he was talented enough, had a strong comprehension ability, and also had the shadow cultivation secret technique. Many things could be handled separately. Speaking of the shadow cultivator's secret technique, it could no longer keep up with his cultivation. After all, the shadow cultivation secret technique was only a quasi-gold grade auxiliary martial art. At most, it could help him reach the peak of the 9th layer martial vein. Once he reached the transcendent realm, he would need a better auxiliary martial art. Senior Sister Lan, thank you so much for today. If you hadn't let me read these 2 books, I really wouldn't have known that the profound world was so wonderful. There's so many things to look forward to. Ling Xiao was truly grateful, although he knew that Lan Yu was deliberately making things difficult for him. He did gain some benefits from it. Moreover, it wasn't just a little benefit. Therefore, there was no need to hold a grudge. You finished reading the contents? Lan Yu was somewhat surprised. She didn't think that Ling Xiao would be able to memorize the contents of the 2 books. However, with his speed, it was impossible for him to finish reading them. I'm done. Ling Xiao nodded. Lan Yu's eyes flashed with a touch of disgust. She hated dishonest people, but she didn't say anything. In any case, Ling Xiao wasn't her disciple. If he liked to lie and brag, then she would let him be. Ling Xiao saw the disgust in Lan Yu's eyes, but he didn't explain. After all, he didn't have any improper thoughts about Lan Yu. Moreover, he wasn't her disciple. He didn't care what Lan Yu thought of him. In the following days, Ling Xiao didn't stay in the medicine hall's library. Instead, he went to Herb Mountain and Beast Mountain. From noon to the next day, he spent almost all of his time in Herb Mountain and Beast Mountain. The first half of his time was in Herb Mountain, and the second half was in Beast Mountain. After all, the knowledge in the books was just pictures. How could it be as wonderful as the real world? He compared the information in his memory with the herbs in the real world. This way, he could understand more clearly. It had to be said that the accuracy of these 2 books was very high, but there were still some omissions. Of course, this might not be an oversight. It was just that the ability of an alchemist was limited and couldn't find it. However, Ling Xiao's special ability, analysis and practice, which he obtained from the mountain and river martial spirit, could completely find these omissions and find a way to deal with them. He believed that if he were to refine pills, the pills he refined would be more perfect than those at the same level. With an understanding of herbs and spirit beasts, it would be very easy to learn the fire control technique. As for basic pharmacology, basic alchemy technique, and basic alchemy technique, they weren't worth mentioning. Of course, he still needed to ask Lan Yu, or about some things. He didn't care whether Lan Yu, or gave him a good look or not. If he learned something, it would be his. At first, Lan Yu, or just casually responded. But later, she took the initiative to look for Ling Xiao to discuss. This was because she was astonished to discover that Ling Xiao's understanding of medicinal herbs and spirit beasts was actually more thorough than hers in certain areas. His understanding was also more comprehensive. This discovery made her proud heart completely relieved. People who knew Lan Yu would know that although this girl was indeed very arrogant, she had always been a little crazy about learning. This was somewhat similar to Ling Xiao. That night, Ling Xiao didn't sleep at all. He wanted to seize the time to consolidate all the things he learned. Learning didn't mean that he would always know. He needed to consolidate it and thoroughly understand it. Otherwise, a smattering of knowledge would kill him. The next morning, he stood up and rubbed his legs. Today was the day of the open competition with Yang Cheng and Lianel. He worked too hard last night and almost forgot about it. Originally, before the competition, he should have a good rest. But now he was busy the whole night. Because old Hall Master Yang wasn't here, Ling Xiao went to Lan Yu, to ask for leave. This senior sister was impartial. If he left without asking for leave, who knew what kind of rotten fruit he would eat when he came back? You're not allowed to go. Lan Yu, decisively refused Ling Xiao's request. Why? Ling Xiao asked with a puzzled expression. First of all, you haven't finished what old Hall Master Yang asked you to do. Secondly, as your senior sister, I really don't think you can challenge those two people. Lan Yu's answer was also very concise. Ling Xiao smiled and said, First of all, I have done what old Hall Master Yang asked me to do. Secondly, I don't care about those two people at all. The reason why I challenge them is to get more resources. In addition, it's also to deter others, so that they won't always come to trouble me. Chapter 269. Lan Yu was still as cold as ice. She said coldly, I don't know your strength, but you said you did what old Hall Master Yang asked you to do. That's pure nonsense. Don't think you can get carried away just because you found something that even I don't know. Your foundation is still far from enough. Hee, senior sister, there's no point in saying that. How about this? You can test me. If I can really complete the mission, you have to let me go. Otherwise, I can't afford to lose face. Moreover, my prize is 1,000-year golden snow lotus. It would be a pity to just give it away for free. Ling Xiao said with a smile. After getting along with her for less than 2 days, Ling Xiao had basically figured out Lan Yu's temper. She was really cold on the outside but warm on the inside. So, it was nothing to joke with her. 1,000-year-old golden snow lotus. You're really generous. Lan Yu looked at Ling Xiao with a face full of disappointment. After a moment of silence, he said, All right, since you're so confident, then I'll test you. If you pass my test, not to mention challenging an outer court disciple, even if you challenge an inner court disciple, I won't care. I really don't dare to challenge the inner disciples. Senior Lan, you can't give me a test other than those books. Then I'll just admit defeat. Ling Xiao said, Don't worry. It's all the content in those books. Lan Yu looked at Dai Yuling and said, Dai Yuling can be a witness. I naturally believe in you. You can give me a test. Ling Xiao looked at the sky outside. It was still early. As long as he went there before noon, he wouldn't automatically admit defeat. In fact, even if there was no witness, Lan Yu wouldn't give him a test other than those books. Most pharmacists had to study hard for 3 to 5 years before they could get a basic understanding of those books. It would take at least 10 years, or even dozens of years, to fully comprehend them. This was just a small achievement. She, Lan Yu, was naturally intelligent and had a strong perception. Whether it was martial arts or alchemy, she was a real genius. However, it took her several years to get to the small achievement. It took her nearly 10 years to get to her current level. One had to know that she had been learning alchemy since she was 9 years old. This Ling Xiao obviously had good eyesight and good perception, but his mentality was extremely impetuous. This time he had to teach him a lesson so that he wouldn't dare to be so cocky in the future. He would study hard and maybe he could really become the good alchemist that old Hall Master Yang was looking forward to. In short, she didn't believe that Ling Xiao had learned those books. It had only been less than 2 days, and it was already good enough that he could finish reading them. Learn. Was he still human? The first question is also the most basic question. What is a medicinal pill? Lan Yu asked. This question was indeed the most basic and simple one. However, laymen might not be able to answer it. Tracing back to the origin and development of alchemy and pills. Pills originated from the immemorial martial artists' alchemy techniques, and it was also the continuation and development of the immemorial alchemy techniques. Alchemy and pills were an inseparable whole. Without the ancient human race martial artists, it would be impossible for there to be today's pill culture. Pills were created by the immemorial martial artists' alchemists. In the immemorial era, pills had 2 meanings. One was an immortal pill, and the other was an ordinary medicine. The pills refined by the immemorial alchemists were called external pills. It referred to using a furnace to refine gold and stone into medicinal bait to create an immortal golden pill. Alchemy techniques had an early origin on the heavenly dragon continent about 100,000 years ago. At that time, alchemist Li Xiaojun used pill sand into gold as a food container to refine golden pills. 50,000 years ago, alchemist Wei Boyang wrote the yin-yang deed of thorough comprehension, which used yin and yang to describe golden pills. It was known as the Eternal Alchemy Canon. 1,000 years ago, the alchemist Emperor Go had summarized the external elixirs that had been circulating at that time. He had written a book called the Immemorial Alchemy Canon. He had divided the external elixirs into 3 categories: divine elixirs, golden elixirs, and golden elixirs. He had also called the golden elixirs as medicine. The longer it was burned, the more wonderful the changes would be. Ling Xiao talked eloquently from the first appearance of alchemy 100,000 years ago to the modern era. Not only did he clearly answer Lan Yu's questions, but he also talked about it in more detail. Even Lan Yu didn't pay much attention to some of the secrets he talked about. Okay, you passed the first question, but this question is relatively simple. The second question is not easy to answer. Although Lan Yu was surprised, she was very calm on the surface. Wait a minute, senior sister. You have to ask a few questions. You have to make it clear first. Otherwise, it will be meaningless after the challenge time. Ling Xiao said, "Don't worry, there are only 4 questions." Okay, you ask. The second question, explain the relationship between fire control technique and medicinal herbs. This question seemed simple, but it was actually very complicated. Many alchemists didn't completely understand it until they died. The reason why there are failures in alchemy was because they didn't grasp it well. However, Ling Xiao was not an ordinary person. He smiled and said, "Fire control technique is about the control of the fire and the use of the flame. The control of the fire is easy to understand. There are big, small, medium, slow, and so on. The nature of the elixir is different, so the flame requirements are different. In the process of alchemy, the flame needs to be adjusted in time. In addition, the flame is divided into ordinary fire, civil, and martial fire, true samadhi fire." Ling Xiao's answer was not only detailed, but also just right. Even if Lan Yu wanted to find some trouble, she couldn't find any. The third question involves practical application, but it's still the most basic application. Listen carefully. I'll add an ordinary golden snow lotus and various auxiliary medicinal herbs. What's the best alchemy formula? How do you operate it? When it came to this question, it basically involved the profession of alchemists. Dai Yuling was obviously nervous on the side. Conceptual questions, if one had a good memory, they could still remember them. But when it came to professional questions, they needed to understand them. It was definitely not something that could be solved with a good memory. Outside the door, Hall Master Yang had come back. He stood there and listened to the conversation in the room. While stroking his beard, a dignified expression appeared on his face. He was very satisfied with Ling Xiao's answers to the first two questions. But for this question, he always felt that Lan Yu was a little too hasty. Even if Ling Xiao's comprehension was good, it was impossible for him to answer such a professional question. What's wrong? Are you worried? The puppy on his shoulder transmitted a message to Hall Master Yang. I'm a little worried. This boy is indeed a genius, but it hasn't been 2 days. He's just self-taught. No one taught him alchemy skills. How can he know these? Hall Master Yang transmitted a message with a wry smile. In the room, Dai Yuling also reminded Lan Yu. Master, isn't it a little too much? What's too much? He's so smart. How can he not answer? In fact, Lan Yu was a little excited. She found that Ling Xiao's comprehension was much better than hers. For a moment, she felt a little unbalanced. She wanted to see how strong Ling Xiao could be. Of course, my first choice is the golden snow lotus spirit dispersing pill. Ling Xiao answered calmly. In fact, this question was really nothing to him. Chapter 270. The reason why I chose the golden snow lotus energy dispersing pill is that the golden snow lotus contains a special ingredient called snow lotus essence. It can dissolve the discomfort caused by the expansion of the true essence. In this answer, Ling Xiao not only explained why he chose to make the golden snow lotus energy dispersing pill, but also quoted many classic quotations and practical cases from the books he had read. Novel. In the whole process of answering, he said more than 1,000 words. His profound understanding of the basic books and his thorough understanding of pharmacology and medicinal herbs were simply amazing. Outside the door, Hall Master Yang was surprised and surprised. He even suspected that Ling Xiao had read those books before. But it was impossible. The Compendium of Spiritual Herbs and the Illustrated Handbook of Spiritual Beasts were definitely not something that people in the secular world could read. And even if he had read them before, Ling Xiao was only 14 years old. Could it be that he began to learn these things when he was in his mother's womb? Obviously, that was impossible. So, there was only one conclusion, that this boy was too abnormal. Lan Yu's face was full of surprise. At this time, she couldn't understand this boy, who was younger than her at all. From the beginning of the conversation, she knew that Ling Xiao was really a layman in alchemy. But now, Ling Xiao's performance was like an old pharmacist who had studied alchemy for many years. This was too incredible. Have you really never learned alchemy before? Lan Yu couldn't help but ask. No. Ling Xiao shook his head. His eyes were very clear. He didn't need to lie at all. Dai Yuling, who was next to him, was surprised. She knew that Ling Xiao definitely didn't know about pharmacology when he was in the latent dragon camp. Otherwise, Ling Xiao could cure the injury of cold plum. But now, Ling Xiao felt that his foundation was stronger than hers. He was really a genius in alchemy. After all, even Lan Yu couldn't figure out some of the things that Ling Xiao said, let alone her. All right, last question. Lan Yu took a deep breath and decided to increase the difficulty of the problem. Senior sister, please speak. Now here are the materials for alchemy. Ordinary gold, snow lotus energy dispersing pill can be refined with these materials. Go ahead and refine an ordinary gold, snow lotus energy dispersing pill. Creak. The door was pushed open and old Hall Master Yang walked in with a smile. Little on, don't make things difficult for him. In less than 2 days, it's already good that he can understand the method of alchemy. but this is completely different from actual practice. Even for you, it took you a month to successfully refine an ordinary spirit pill. Lan Yuer also knew that her question was too difficult for Ling Xiao. This was a very complicated and comprehensive practical question. Not only do you have to understand pharmacology, medicinal herbs, fire control, basic alchemy, and so on, but you also have to understand the various tools and processes of alchemy. If there was even the slightest mistake in the process, it would be impossible to successfully refine the pill. She asked this question because she wanted to know where Ling Xiao's bottom line was. She really didn't mean to make things difficult for him. However, after being reminded by Old Hall Master Yang, she suddenly woke up. In other people's eyes, she was really deliberately making things difficult for him. To be honest, Lan Yuer didn't want to offend such a genius. She wanted to use Old Hall Master Yang's words as a way to step down. So she said, "You're right. Although the practical process is described in those books, you haven't actually learned it, and I haven't taught you. It's beyond the scope, senior sister Lan. You don't have to change the question. Anyway, refining an ordinary gold snow lotus energy dispersing pill won't take a long time. Let me try." Although Ling Xiao hadn't practiced it in reality, his martial soul avatar had tried it many times in the mountain river world. He confirmed that he had no problem. "What? Are you sure you want to do this?" Old Hall Master Yang was also stunned. One had to know that alchemy was something that could only be done by true alchemists. Although the refinement of the ordinary golden snow lotus energy dispersing pill was relatively simple, and the formula wasn't complicated, even so, it still required more than 10 medicinal herbs. The attributes, characteristics, and taboos of various medicinal herbs needed to be clearly understood. Even if there was a slight mistake, it would fail. Not to mention the control of the fire in the middle, which was simply a nightmare for newcomers. A newcomer who had just learned pharmacology for less than 2 days probably didn't even remember the names of various medicinal herbs, let alone the characteristics and taboos. You want him to refine a pill? Wasn't this purely funny? But Ling Xiao actually agreed. Could this kid really do it? Or was he just unwilling to admit defeat? Or was he just arrogant? Ling Xiao didn't know what they were thinking. He still had to rush to teach Li Anil and Yang Cheng a lesson, so he had already started. Old Hall Master Yang and Lan Yuer looked at each other and saw the disbelief in each other's eyes. However, what happened next made them feel even more incredulous. Ling Xiao's process of selecting the herbs, mixing the herbs, lighting the fire, controlling the fire, and refining the pill was completely smooth without any pause in the middle. There were even some medicinal herbs that he could tell exactly what they were with just a glance. The gold snow lotus was relatively easy to identify, but the dozen medicinal herbs that went with it were more difficult because they were all inconspicuous. Only an old alchemist could identify them at once. However, Ling Xiao was more terrifying than an old alchemist. He didn't even need to weigh the number of medicinal herbs, as if his hand was the most accurate measuring tool. Looking at this, Old Hall Master Yang was dumbfounded. Lan Yuer's heart trembled. She really couldn't believe that this 14-year-old boy in front of her was actually more outstanding than her. For many years, she had always been known as one of the most outstanding geniuses among the inner disciples. In terms of pharmacology, she was absolutely number one. But now, her number one position was obviously inferior. Originally, she should be angry and angry. But strangely, she actually had a special feeling in her heart. She couldn't tell what it was, but looking at Ling Xiao's serious appearance while refining the pill, his originally ordinary appearance became handsome. After he finished his analysis, he left the dumbfounded old man Guan and alchemist Yin Yao. "Time's up." Ling Xiao suddenly stretched out his hand to open the alchemy furnace. Seeing this, Old Hall Master Yang and Lan Yuer heaved a sigh of relief. This was because they felt that Ling Xiao was too early. This Ling Xiao wasn't monstrous enough to defy the heavens. For ordinary people, 15 minutes was the standard time to refine the gold snow lotus spirit dispersing pill. However, Ling Xiao was still far away from 15 minutes, but he actually wanted to open the furnace. Chapter 271. Without looking at the pill in the furnace, Old Hall Master Yang smiled and said, Ling Xiao, although there is a problem with your pill refining process, it doesn't matter. You've done very well. At your age, only Lan Er can do this. But she started learning alchemy at the age of 9, and you've just started. Old Senior, is there a problem with my pill refining process? Ling Xiao asked with a frown. He didn't understand what was wrong with his pill refining process. Everything was going smoothly. It's too early to open the furnace, but this is normal. After all, it's your first time refining pills, Lan Yue replied. A rare smile appeared on her face. Could it be that this popsicle was going to melt? But Old Senior, I think the quality of my gold snow lotus spirit dispersing pill is better than the ones refined by your medicine hall. Ling Xiao took his pill and handed it to Old Hall Master Yang. How is this possible? Ah, this is impossible. Old Hall Master Yang's words were a little incoherent. That was because he had initially thought that Ling Xiao was a little arrogant. However, when he saw the medicinal pill, his expression turned into one of astonishment. At this time, even the puppy on his shoulder, which had been sleeping with its eyes closed, opened its eyes and barked twice. Lan Yu's face was also flushed with shock, like a ripe apple. Dai Yuling sat directly on the ground, her whole body drenched. He only used 1/3 of the time to refine such a perfect gold snow lotus spirit dispersing pill. This old man isn't hallucinating, is he? Old Hall Master Yang pulled his beard fiercely, as if he wanted to save himself from an illusion. Oh, it's not an illusion. Boy, how did you do it? Old Hall Master Yang asked in amazement. No. Don't answer. Let this old man think. He walked around the furnace, then carefully observed the furnace fire. Finally, he observed the pill. Then he clapped his hands and said, I understand. You're really a genius. When most people refine pills, a lot of the furnace's energy will be wasted in the process. Moreover, there will always be mistakes in controlling the fire. Therefore, one can only refine slowly. This way, if there are mistakes, one can fix them in time. But you're different. You actually used your true essence to create an insulating layer around the pill furnace. This prevented the furnace's energy from leaking out. Of course, this is only a small trick. This old man and Lan girl have tried it before, but we weren't as good as you. The most surprising thing is that you didn't make the slightest mistake in the process of controlling the fire. In other words, the entire process was flawless. That's why you were able to greatly reduce the time. Lan Yu asked anxiously, Ling Xiao, are you hiding something from us? Just the day before yesterday, you didn't know anything about pharmacology. How could you refine such a perfect gold snow lotus energy dispersing pill today? She suspected that Ling Xiao had never concocted pills before. Ling Xiao smiled unhurriedly and said, Senior sister, I don't have many advantages, but my memory is especially good and my comprehension is passable. I have memorized all the books you gave me the day before yesterday, and I have more or less comprehended them. Moreover, I have already gone through the process of refining pills more than 100 times in my mind, which is why I was able to succeed so easily. Don't tell me that you've memorized all the books. Lan Yu's eyes widened like two bright moons. Ling Xiao nodded solemnly and said, Senior sister, you're right. I've memorized all the books. In fact, not only the gold snow lotus energy dispersing pill, I can even refine other ordinary pills. When he spoke, his tone was as modest as possible. He didn't want others to think that he was too arrogant. But what was the use of being modest about this kind of thing? In the eyes of others, being able to do this kind of thing, modesty would become arrogance. Old Hall Master Yang glanced at the puppy on his shoulder. At that moment, a golden light suddenly appeared on the puppy's forehead. Although it disappeared in a flash, it was still caught by Ling Xiao. Only now did he know that the puppy was not ordinary. Old man, do you mean that he didn't lie? Old Hall Master Yang's face showed ecstasy. His puppy was not ordinary. The golden light on its forehead was an ancient magical ability, the eyes of truth. It was useless for anyone to lie in front of it. Now that he learned that Ling Xiao didn't lie, it meant that what Ling Xiao said was true. He really did have a terrible memory and perception. Old Hall Master Yang had lived for more than 100 years. He was close to 200 years old. He had seen too many geniuses. Among them, there were many people who had a retentive memory. Ling Xiao seemed to not only have a good memory, but his perception was also heaven-defying. If one only remembered, it was impossible to successfully refine pills. That required a complete understanding. Obviously, Ling Xiao did it. In fact, Old Hall Master Yang didn't fully understand how terrifying Ling Xiao was. He didn't have a good memory or a high perception. Instead, he could directly integrate what he saw and touched into his soul. The soul was the foundation of a person. All the knowledge, memories, skills, and so on of a person existed in the soul. Not to mention a few books. Even if it was a complicated martial art move, he could directly take it for himself. It just depended on whether he liked it or not. Monster. After a long time, Old Hall Master Yang and Lan Yu said these two words at the same time. Yes, an existence more terrifying than a genius. Wasn't that a monster? You two are overpraising me. I just have a good memory. I can probably achieve a retentive memory. In addition, my perception is slightly better. Ling Xiao scratched his head and said embarrassedly, Pretend. You brat, keep pretending. Having a retentive memory and a terrifying perception is very important for a martial artist. Don't you know how important it is? Old Hall Master Yang said with his eyes wide open. Although his eyes were wide open, there was a smug smile on his face. Fortunately, he had poached this brat early. Otherwise, he would have suffered a great loss if others took a fancy to him. Not to mention comprehension ability. Just the ability to remember things with a single glance was enough to allow a martial artist to stand above others. If coupled with comprehension, it would be like using cheats. However, Old Hall Master Yang didn't know that these two so-called abilities were just the branches of the mountain river martial soul. Ling Xiao's ability was far beyond their imagination. Can I test you again? Lan Yu hesitated and said, Senior sister, we agreed on 4 questions. You can't go back on your words. Ling Xiao smiled bitterly. No, I just want to confirm if you really have a retentive memory, Lan Yu explained. Ling Xiao looked at the sky. There was still time, so he could only sigh and say, Okay, but it can't be too long. If you want to ask, hurry up. Haha, I want to participate too. Dai Yuling said hurriedly. This old man will also join in the fun. Old Hall Master Yang also became playful. Chapter 272. In the next quarter of an hour, Old Hall Master Yang, Lan Yu, and Dai Yuling took turns to bombard Ling Xiao with questions randomly. Sometimes, they even asked Ling Xiao to recite some content directly. As a result, not only did Ling Xiao answer the questions fluently, but he also pointed out some omissions in the book, which directly made the 3 of them dumbfounded. Dai Yuling smiled bitterly. Lan Yu, his arrogance, was completely defeated by Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao's monstrous talent isn't something they can compare with. Even Old Hall Master Yang smiled bitterly. This is really a case of talented people being born in every generation, and each generation is stronger than the previous one. This old man's generation is going to be beaten to the beach by your generation. Although he said so, he couldn't hide the joy in his heart. The reason why he hasn't had a breakthrough in his cultivation wasn't because he couldn't, but because he put a lot of energy into training his disciples. He needs an heir for his medical knowledge. Unfortunately, it hasn't been realized yet. Lan Yu is a real genius, but unfortunately her identity is noble, and her master isn't inferior to him, so she can't be his heir. He didn't expect that God wasn't blind and actually gave him Ling Xiao. This is simply the best gift given to him. He originally fancied Ling Xiao only because of Ling Xiao's comprehension ability in the God-Sealing catalog. But now, it seems that he really underestimated this kid. This kid's talent is definitely much more terrifying than he imagined. Senior Sister Lan, you won't stop me from challenging him, right? Ling Xiao looked at Lan Yuer and asked. Lan Yuer sighed. I really don't know why you have to challenge him now. It won't be too late to challenge him after your strength has increased. How can you win now? Little Lan, don't worry about him. It's good to let this kid suffer a little. Otherwise, his tail will be raised to the sky. Old Hall Master Yang smiled. Thank you, Senior Sister Lan. Then I'll go. Ling Xiao said excitedly. Wait a minute. Lan Yuer suddenly shouted. What's wrong, Senior Sister? Are you really going back on your word? Ling Xiao's expression didn't look too good. He didn't like capricious people. Don't worry, I just want to go with you and take a look. Lan Yuer suddenly laughed and said, Let's see how you will be beaten until you look for your teeth on the ground. You're not a little guy yet. Ling Xiao muttered. You are only 2 years older than me. How dare you pretend to be an adult? What did you say? Lan Yuer widened her almond-shaped eyes. Nothing, nothing. Ling Xiao really didn't dare offend Lan Yuer. After all, the other party was a 9th layer Transcendent Realm Master. If she wanted to teach him a lesson, wouldn't it be child's play? Master, I want to watch the show too, Dai Yuling added. You can't do it. Ling Xiao reached this level in less than 2 days. You've been studying for longer than her. Stay here and study the book I gave you. You'll be tested when you come back. Lan Yuer was really impartial and didn't care about human feelings. Okay then. Although Dai Yuling really wanted to cheer for Ling Xiao, she was more concerned about working hard. She couldn't surpass Ling Xiao and Lan Yuer, but she could at least become a character like Old Hall Master Yang. She really had to work hard. Just like that, Ling Xiao left the medicine hall under Lan Yuer's supervision and rushed to the outer court square. He was going to complete his first official challenge since joining the Yuehua school. This was different from the usual private matches. This time the challenge was allowed by the outer court main hall. An entire outer court knew about it. If he won, he would be promoted to the top 30 and enjoy the preferential treatment of an inner court disciple. If he lost, he might not be able to raise his head again. Along the way, Ling Xiao was thinking about the challenge and didn't even look at the beautiful woman beside him. Lan Yuer was a little disappointed. Her master was the Grand Elder of the Yuehua school and had a high status. Even the current headmaster of the Yuehua school didn't dare to offend her. Her martial arts talent had always been one of the best in the Yuehua school. Her medical talent was the best, second to none. Her beauty was definitely one of the best in the entire Yuehua school. Because of this, she had always lacked true friends. Those who surrounded her all day long just wanted to curry favor with her. Therefore, although she longed for friends, she pretended to be an iceberg, a woman who didn't want anyone to get close to her. However, Ling Xiao's appearance was gradually melting this iceberg. Lan Yuer suddenly realized that there was someone more outstanding than her in this world, and it was a man. She didn't want to accept it, but she was also surprised. Regardless of Ling Xiao's martial arts talent, his medical talent was absolutely unparalleled. Such a talented young man didn't have the slightest arrogance and could get along very well with Dai Yuling. It was said that he also had a good relationship with Wu Xiang, a low-level outer sect disciple. She had gradually changed her view of Ling Xiao. However, she definitely didn't want to win him over. She really admired and was surprised. Ling Xiao didn't know what Lan Yuer was thinking. He didn't care. He hated it when others ignored him. If others ignored him, he wouldn't pounce on them and pester them either. If others were warm to him, he would also express his kindness. Wu Xiang was like this, and so was Hall Master Yang. Lan Yuer still needed to be observed. However, her current attitude was quite good. At least she wasn't as arrogant as she was the day before. A lot of people had already gathered in the outer sect square. Today was an open challenge. The outer sect headquarters specially allowed the outer sect disciples to ask for leave to watch the challenge. If it was an ordinary challenge, it wouldn't be necessary. However, someone wanted to challenge a quasi-inner sect disciple. Moreover, he wanted to challenge 2 inner sect disciples at once. This was really necessary. It was also a learning experience. It wasn't just watching the fun. Originally, many people hoped that Ling Xiao would win. At least, he could break the current situation of the top 30 disciples. However, when Ling Xiao and Lan Yu appeared together, these people's thoughts completely changed. They were envious, jealous, and hateful. This Ling Xiao, how did he manage to hook up with senior sister Lan Yu? This is too awesome. Senior sister Lan Yu is the goddess in my heart. How can I let this guy tarnish her? I hope senior brother Li and senior brother Yang can teach this guy a lesson today and embarrass Ling Xiao. Not to mention the outer sect disciples, even He Suo and the other inner sect disciples who were watching the challenge were dumbfounded, especially He Suo. Although he didn't particularly care about women, he only coveted Lan Yu's beauty and ability. However, he was only at Transcendent Realm Stage 3. He wasn't qualified to pursue Lan Yu. Lan Yu was usually very noble and indifferent. She kept everyone at a distance. Aside from the older generation of warriors, almost no one could see her smiling face. In He Suo's mind, this woman must be given to him to conquer. Chapter 273. Seeing Ling Xiao and Lan Yu's affectionate appearance, He Suo felt like his vision had turned dark. If he, an inner sect disciple, was like this, then the outer sect disciples were even worse. All of them were gnashing their teeth, wishing they could immediately switch places with Ling Xiao. Senior sister, I'm going over. Ling Xiao turned around and said, Go, be careful. Lan Yu wanted to express her concern, but her words were still cold. Probably because she was used to this kind of disguise. She really couldn't change it in a short time. Ling Xiao walked towards the square's challenge platform. This challenge platform was a specially made treasure. Even a transcendent realm cultivator couldn't easily destroy it. The strongest outer sect disciple was only a half-step grandmaster, not even reaching the transcendent realm. This was definitely very sturdy. Standing on the challenge platform, Ling Xiao looked around. Yang Cheng and Li Anil hadn't arrived yet, but Zhao Ji, Su Ying, Zhao Xi, and the others from the outer sect had all arrived. In fact, everyone wanted to challenge a quasi-inner sect disciple, because in addition to an increase in salary, they would also have more time to cultivate. They wouldn't have to do heavy physical work, and would only need to be responsible for management. And the higher the ranking, the more power and status they would have. They wouldn't even need to do management work. Every day, they would only need to cultivate, and they would receive more generous rewards than other outer sect disciples. Right? The top 10 outer sect disciples could also have their own secluded caves. Not only was it comfortable to live there, but it was also rich in world energy. Cultivating there would be twice the result with half the effort. Soon, Yang Cheng and Li Anil also arrived. Even Elder Bai had arrived. Elder Bai would always be present for challenges related to the top 10 outer sect disciples. This could be regarded as a kind of expression of the sect's importance. Ling Xiao, come down first. Yang Cheng will also accept 2 challenges today. Let him fight someone else first. Then you fight Li Anil. Stagger in the middle to make the challenge fair. Elder Bai called Ling Xiao down from the challenge platform. Ling Xiao glanced at Yang Cheng. He could roughly understand Yang Cheng's thoughts. Even Ling Xiao dared to fight 1 against 2. Yang Cheng, who was ranked 10th in the outer sect, wouldn't dare to fight 1 against 2? From now on, Lu Chong, who is ranked 15th in the outer sect, challenges Yang Cheng, who is ranked 10th in the outer sect. This was a battle between quasi-inner disciples. One was ranked 15th. One was ranked 10th. Both of them were half-step masters. It turned out that this Lu Chang had once challenged the third-ranked Jin Ming, and the result was a crushing defeat. This time he had learned his lesson, so he chose to challenge Yang Cheng, who was ranked last in the top 10. Under normal circumstances, Yang Cheng was the weakest among the top 10. As long as he defeated him, he would be able to obtain his own cave, and the resources would also be much richer. The top 30 were considered one class. The top 10 was another level altogether. If you want to get into the top 30, you have to get into the top 30. As for those in the top 30, they hoped to enter the top 10. Seeing Lu Chang, Yang Cheng just smiled slightly and said, "Can't beat Jin Ming, so you came to challenge me. Do you really take me to be a pushover?" Wind and rain sword technique. As soon as Yang Cheng finished speaking, he stabbed out with his sword. The sword light was as fine as the wind and rain, densely covering Lu Chang. It was continuous and extremely terrifying. Lu Chang held the steel saber and used all his strength to block Yang Cheng's attack. The battle between the two half-step masters as their auras collided. The aftermath spread out and shrouded the audience below the stage. Many of the outer sect disciples could feel their auras shaking, as if their true chi was being forcibly drawn out. It was extremely uncomfortable. Such terrifying power, but it doesn't belong to the transcendent realm. This is the power of a half-step master. Although he hasn't reached the transcendent realm, the power of some of his martial skills is no less than that of a first-layer transcendent realm martial artist. Yeah, it's obviously much stronger than a peak, 9th-layer martial vein martial artist. Among the audience, whether it was the new outer sect disciples or the old outer sect disciples who wanted to challenge the top 30, they were all shocked by the shocking scene. They had never seen a battle between half-step masters, but when they saw it, they knew that they were invincible. The Yuehua school had been established for 100,000 years. It wasn't that no one could defeat a half-step master with the cultivation of the peak 9th-layer martial vein, but it was extremely rare. It was impossible for someone below the late-stage 9th-layer martial vein to defeat a half-step master. This had almost become the truth of the Yuehua school. Because of this, when they heard that Ling Xiao wanted to challenge Li Anil and Yang Cheng with the cultivation of the peak 8th-layer martial vein, they despised and ridiculed Ling Xiao, thinking that Ling Xiao didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Even old Hall Master Yang and Lan Yu. I didn't believe that Ling Xiao could do this. On the stage, although Lu Chang and Yang Cheng were both half-step masters, there was still a huge gap between half-step masters. However, there was still a huge gap between half-step masters. This included martial techniques, quintessence combat techniques, and other factors. Combining all of them, Yang Cheng was much stronger. Asterisk puff, 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 puff. Asterisk the sword move, which didn't seem fierce, suddenly burst out with amazing power. Poor Lu Chang tried his best to defend, but his protective true chi was like tofu. It was pierced full of holes. It was very miserable. Even on his body, there were many injuries. Small bloody holes were constantly spurting out blood. Ling Xiao frowned slightly. The wind and rain sword art that Yang Cheng used was only a gold grade entry-level martial skill, but it had reached the perfection level. It was almost perfect. In contrast, Lu Chang was much worse. Yang Cheng had a reason to be arrogant. After a dozen moves, Lu Chang didn't even have a chance to fight back. He was injured all over and was in a sorry state. Fortunately, he knew his own limits and directly admitted defeat, thus avoiding continuing to make a fool of himself. He's too strong. Is this Yang Cheng's strength? No wonder he can be ranked in the top 10. Yes, Lu Chang is already terrifying enough. It is said that he once defeated Li Anil in 3 moves. In the end, he was defeated by Yang Cheng in a dozen moves. Moreover, it was a complete defeat. Can Ling Xiao withstand 1 move? I think it's difficult. Discussions rose one after another. The people who didn't think highly of Ling Xiao were optimistic about Ling Xiao after witnessing Yang Cheng's strength. Zhao Ji frowned at this time. He thought that if he fought with Lu Chong, he wouldn't be able to withstand one move. However, Lu Chong, who was so powerful, lost so miserably. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. He felt a little lucky that he didn't rashly issue a challenge. Otherwise, he, a prince, would be defeated so miserably. He would lose face in the future. Compared to Yang Cheng, Ming Tian is nothing, at least in terms of strength. This was Su Ying's judgment. Ming Tian's potential might be stronger than Yang Cheng's, but when Ming Tian left Baiyun province for Yuehua school, he was indeed far inferior to Yang Cheng. Chapter 274. As expected of one of the 12 sects, the disciples here are really strong. Lan Yu looked at Ling Xiao. She hoped to see a trace of panic or fear on Ling Xiao's face. That way, she would feel a little better. However, there was no panic or fear on Ling Xiao's face. Instead, there was a hint of a smile on his face. No way. Did this kid hide his strength? That was the only explanation. Otherwise, why wasn't Ling Xiao afraid of such a strong collision? Ling Xiao, it's not too late for you to regret now. Yang Cheng, who was on the stage, looked at Ling Xiao and said with a complacent look on his face, "Regret? Why should I regret?" Ling Xiao slowly walked up to the challenge ring and gestured at Li Anil, who was below the ring. "I'll deal with you first. Then I'll deal with Yang Cheng. Yang Cheng, I advise you to go back and rest. You really don't know what death is." Yang Cheng snorted and jumped down from the stage. Someone had already prepared a seat for him to rest. Li Anil smiled and said, "Senior Yang, I'm afraid you won't have the chance to fight again. If he can't even defeat me, then he is not qualified to fight with you. Don't be careless. Don't forget what happened last time. Don't worry, Senior Yang. I won't be careless and I won't show any mercy." After saying that, Li Anil jumped up to the stage. Compared to the previous battle between the half-step masters, this battle was more eye-catching. A martial vein level 8 martial artist challenging a half-step master. The gap between them was too big. Since ancient times, Yuehua school had never had such a situation. This was the first time something like this had happened. Many people just came to see how Ling Xiao would be defeated. Especially when they saw Ling Xiao and Lan Yu walking together, they became more anxious. Outer disciple Ling Xiao challenges the inner disciple, Li Anil, who is ranked 26th. Elder Bai announced expressionlessly. Although he wasn't optimistic about Ling Xiao's chances, he was looking forward to it. In the past few years, the outer court had recruited fewer disciples, and the good geniuses had been directly accepted into the inner court or become the inner court elders' inner court disciples. Therefore, there weren't many true geniuses. It wasn't that things like challenging people above their level had never happened before, but they had never succeeded. Therefore, other than some changes in the rankings, no one had been able to enter the top 30 through the challenges. Only if a disciple ranked in the top 30 broke through to the transcendent realm and became an inner sect disciple would they be able to fill the gap. This caused the outer sect disciples to have a poor sense of competition. There was almost no pressure to be in the top 30. That wouldn't do. He hoped that there would be some changes and that these fellows would be taught a lesson. He hoped that someone could barge in and stir up this pool of stagnant water. However, even though he thought so, others didn't think so. Upon hearing the names of the two people, the audience burst into laughter. They did not give Ling Xiao any face at all. Some people even threw eggs and rotten vegetable leaves at Ling Xiao. Scram! Ling Xiao wasn't the kind of person who would suffer a loss. With a roar, his true chi madly leaked out, and the eggs and rotten vegetable leaves shot back like hidden weapons. Those who threw the eggs at Ling Xiao didn't even have time to react before their heads were smashed and bleeding. For experts, rotten vegetable leaves were also weapons. Whoever is causing trouble, get the hell out of here immediately. Shame on you. Elder Bai was also angry. When his voice rang out, a terrifying aura enveloped the entire square. The outer sect disciples were all silent out of fear. This kind of aura was too terrifying. This was the aura of a ninth heavenly layer transcendent. It was simply enough to force people to commit suicide. No one dared to shout anymore. Those who had suffered a loss didn't dare to either. They could only silently bear the bitter fruit they brought upon themselves and treat their wounds with golden sore ointment and other things. Hee, how awe-inspiring. But to meet me, consider yourself unlucky. Lian chuckled as he looked at Ling Xiao and said, "A loser dares to say such words." Ling Xiao said coldly, "That day I underestimated you. It definitely won't happen again today." Lian Lu emphasized, "Cut the crap. That day, I was able to defeat you in one move. Today, I can still do it." With that said, Ling Xiao had already moved. He felt that there was no need to exchange pointers with Lian Lu. He purely wanted to help Wu Xiang and himself vent his anger. So when he made his move, Ling Xiao didn't plan to give Lian Lu any chance. In that instant, Li Anil only saw Ling Xiao move from the opposite side. In the next moment, he felt his body fly backward and fall heavily to the ground. Something blasted a large hole in his chest, dripping with blood. It was very terrifying. "Ah!" A pig-like cry rang out. Lian Lu was in so much pain that he was tossing and turning. "Elder Bai, is this challenge over?" Ling Xiao looked at Elder Bai, who was still in a daze, and said, Yes, it's over. Ling Xiao versus Lian Lu. Ling Xiao wins." Although Elder Bai was strong, he had never seen a martial master at the peak of the 8th level of the martial vein who could seriously injure a half-step martial master in one move. When he looked carefully, Ling Xiao's right hand had actually turned into the claw of a beast. It looked more like the claw of a divine dragon. Ling Xiao had combined the slaughter of the divine Prison King fist with the demonization of the 9 demons' divine art, Demon King, to produce such a shocking effect. Even he was a little surprised. This was only a partial demonization. The effect of the 9 demons' divine art was too powerful. "Yang Cheng, get up here." After defeating Lian Lu, Ling Xiao wasn't willing to stop at all and directly shouted Yang Cheng's name. "You and I have just finished a battle. It can be considered fair." Yang Cheng was still in a state of shock. When he was shouted at by Ling Xiao, his eyes revealed a ruthless look and he directly rushed up to the challenge stage. Lian Lu was defeated too quickly. He really didn't expect this. He didn't even see how Ling Xiao won. However, he believed that he wouldn't lose to Ling Xiao. After all, he could also defeat Lian Lu in one move. At this time, he had already forgotten that Ling Xiao had only used the strength of a peak 8th level martial vein martial master. In his eyes, Ling Xiao was barely comparable to Lu Chang, but in the end he was still a defeated opponent. On the challenge stage, Ling Xiao and Yang Qing each stood on one side. Ling Xiao challenges the 10th outer disciple Yang Qing. "Begin." Elder Bai had already recovered from his shock. He stared at Ling Xiao, hoping to get something from this young man's battle. This young man's use of combat skills was much higher than his. The scene just now ended too quickly. Many people didn't know what had happened, but he saw it very clearly. Ling Xiao's strength was not only the strength of his moves, but also the strength of his combat skills. With the least consumption, he achieved the greatest thing. Chapter 275. Yang Cheng stood there with his hands behind his back, coldly looking at Ling Xiao. Although he was a little surprised by Li Anil's failure, he didn't care much about it. Novel! That idiot Li Anil must have underestimated his opponent again. Otherwise, how could he have been sneak attacked? No one thought that his condescension and arrogance were abnormal. It could be imagined that a half-step master ranked 10th would be laughed at as a coward if he was careful when facing a martial master who was only at the peak of the 8th level of the martial vein. His current attitude was normal and reasonable. In front of him, Ling Xiao was just a fish on the chopping board. Maybe the young master couldn't handle it, but the master could easily cut the fish. Alas, it's better to stop while you're ahead, Lan Yu sighed. Although she was surprised that Ling Xiao defeated Li Anil, Yang Cheng was too strong. At least in the outer sect, not many people dared to say that they could win against him. Ling Xiao was like an ant challenging a giant. Forget it, maybe it's a good thing for him to lose. His martial arts aptitude is not good, but his medical aptitude is top-notch. At worst, he can be a top-notch alchemist. Lan Yu. I had already thought about the future for Ling Xiao. Zhao Ji also sighed. He actually wanted to win over Ling Xiao, but Ling Xiao offended Yang Qing and would soon become a laughingstock. He really felt that it was a pity. Su Ying's face was filled with a crazy smile. She knew that Ling Xiao was finished. There was no chance for him to make a comeback. This idiot who didn't know when to retreat would face a tragic defeat. On the stage, Ling Xiao looked at Yang Qing with the same expression on his face. He knew very well how strong Yang Qing was. It was very risky to fight with this guy with the cultivation of the peak of the 8th level of the martial vein. However, Ling Xiao didn't intend to expose his true cultivation here. The risk was high, but it didn't mean that he couldn't win. The greater the pressure, the greater the risk, he felt that he would gain more in this battle. This was a danger, but also an opportunity. Not talking? Do you think your silence will make me go easy on you? I'm not as stupid as Lianel. Before Yang Cheng could finish his words, he suddenly discovered that Ling Xiao's figure had disappeared. 9 demons, divine art. Cloud, dragon, godly travel. In that instant, all the muscles in Yang Cheng's body suddenly contracted, and he even felt a biting chill in his body. He actually couldn't determine Ling Xiao's exact location. Above? Behind? Or to the left? Or the right? Offstage. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. There were probably only 4 or 5 people who could see Ling Xiao's figure, but this definitely did not include Yang Qing. Ling Xiao's Cloud Dragon Divine Journey was originally a gold grade entry level martial art. Combined with the 9 demonic divine art, the evil beast demon king, it was equivalent to a rare gold grade martial art. And don't forget, he also had the blood shadow martial spirit. Not only did this martial soul give him invisibility, but it also gave him an even stranger movement skill and even stranger speed. The sudden change made Yang Cheng's scalp go numb. It made the audience turn pale with fright. Who would have thought that Ling Xiao would actually take the initiative to attack like he did with Li Anil? The terrifying movement skill and the martial soul that matched it were actually flawless. Transformation stage movement skill. Elder by slightly raised his eyebrows. In the outer sect, there was actually someone who could cultivate a gold grade entry level martial art to the transformation stage. This was really a shocking thing. One had to know that even in the inner sect, there were only a few people who could cultivate a gold grade entry level martial art to the transformation stage, let alone the outer sect. Anyway, Elderby knew that only the top 3 monsters could do this, and the rest really couldn't. A gold grade entry level martial art that reached the transformation stage, coupled with the 9 demonic divine art and the blood shadow martial spirit. As a result, Ling Xiao's attack this time was not only powerful, but also terrifying. Yang Cheng was still trying to find Ling Xiao's position, but he didn't find anything. Divine Hell King Fist Slaughter. In a very strange position, Ling Xiao suddenly appeared and then threw a very fierce punch. The power of this punch was even stronger than when he dealt with Li Anil. Ling Xiao's entire right arm looked strange. His arm was covered with golden dragon scales, and one of his hands had turned into a dragon's claw. The terrifying fist force directly hit the air and made an explosive sound. It directly blasted towards Yang Cheng's weakest defense, whirlwind and clouds. At the critical moment, milky white true essence burst out from Yang Cheng's body and then turned into a fierce wind, completely enveloping him. Then, with him as the center, the fierce wind turned into a tornado and swept towards the surrounding area. This power was very domineering and terrifying. It was like a real tornado that wanted to tear Ling Xiao into pieces. Boom, boom! The tornado and the dragon claw collided. making a terrifying sound that made many people's eardrums feel like they were about to burst. The scene was extremely shocking. Gulp! The spectators couldn't help but swallow their saliva. This scene was even more exciting than the previous battle between Yang Cheng and Lu Chong. They didn't even want to blink, because they really didn't want to miss such an exciting battle. After the explosion, blood seeped out of the corner of Yang Cheng's mouth, but he didn't seem to be seriously injured. He stood there with his hair disheveled, like a sword god descending to the mortal world. He had already drawn the long sword in his hand. Facing Ling Xiao, he didn't dare to be the slightest bit negligent. Ling Xiao's light figure landed on the edge of the challenge platform as if he was weightless. His face was slightly pale, but he didn't seem to be injured. Half-step master, your true essence is indeed vigorous, especially Yang Cheng. He's worthy of being the 10th outer disciple. His expression was as indifferent as ever. He looked at Yang Cheng and thought about the next battle. Yang Cheng's strength didn't exceed his estimation. He was indeed very powerful and definitely wouldn't be defeated that easily. Compared to Yang Cheng, Li Anil was simply a piece of trash. They were both half-step masters, but whether it was the ability to deal with the enemy or the intensity of their true essence, they were far apart. In the previous battle, if Yang Cheng didn't act hastily and if he didn't directly find Yang Cheng's weakness, he would definitely be the one at a disadvantage. Even if he relied on the 3rd level of the heavenly dragon golden body, he would still be injured. Therefore, it was meaningless to just defend. He had to continue attacking. Yang Cheng stood there and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His pale face suddenly turned red. Good. That's great. Ling Xiao, you're indeed stronger than that trash, Li Anil. You can actually injure me. Even if it was a sneak attack, it's enough to be proud. However, this is the end for you. A smile appeared on Ling Xiao's face. Really? You're so surprised that I injured you? If I defeated you, wouldn't you be committing suicide? Ling Xiao said with narrowed eyes. Chapter 276. Both of them were preparing for their next attack. The more powerful one was, the more cautious one had to be. No one was willing to reveal their trump card. During this time, the onlookers couldn't help but take a deep breath. The scene just now was so tense that they even forgot to breathe. Yang Cheng's strength was needless to say, but what was up with Ling Xiao's movement skill? That speed, that level of strangeness, it was definitely not inferior to a half-step master, or even stronger. And the power of that punch was definitely not inferior to that of a half-step master. Was this guy really a peak 8th level martial vein realm martial master? Lan Yu, Zhao Ji, Suing, and He Suo were all surprised and in disbelief. Was Ling Xiao going to break the 100,000-year tradition of Yuehua school? He defeated a half-step master with his peak 8th level martial vein realm cultivation. Just as they thought of this, before they could catch their breath, the situation changed again. Yang Cheng made his move. As a half-step master, he was actually injured by Ling Xiao, who was only a peak 8th level martial vein realm martial master. His face and self-esteem were both humiliated. Wind and cloud art. Spring wind and rain step. Wind and rain sword technique. Gold grade entry level internal cultivation skill. Gold grade entry level movement skill. Gold grade entry level sword technique. Yang Cheng didn't hold back at all. Terrifying true origin leaked out from his body, causing a raging wind. His figure suddenly disappeared, like a raindrop in the wind, instantly pouncing on Ling Xiao. At this moment, except for Lan Yu, Elder Bai, and a few others, no one could see Yang Cheng's figure. The situation was exactly the same as when Ling Xiao attacked Yang Cheng. It seemed that Yang Cheng also wanted to show his strength in his movement skill, and let Ling Xiao know how to be afraid. His spring wind and rain step and wind and rain sword technique complemented each other under the effect of wind and cloud art. Obviously, they had improved a lot. The speed of his movement skill was faster. The power of his sword technique was stronger, and the wind and rain true origin produced by wind and cloud art could be released without any hindrance. This was a perfect combination. I've long heard people say that the most frightening thing about Yangqing is that his martial arts always complement each other. Even if he's at the same level, he's always much stronger than others. That's right, his arrogance is not without reason. To be able to enter the top 10 of the outer disciples, he naturally has his own unique advantages. The disciples below the stage were discussing animatedly. It was true that once an expert made a move, one would be able to tell whether or not he was an expert. From the looks of it, Yang Cheng's movement technique didn't seem to be inferior to Ling Zhao's, and his attacks were even better. Under the cover of that terrifying true essence, Ling Zhao was like a small boat in the middle of the sea, capsized by the fierce waves in an instant, and then completely submerged. The third style of the snow lotus sword technique, congealing water. The drifting snow sword suddenly appeared in Ling Zhao's right hand. With a slash, a cold aura immediately covered the entire square. So cold! Many disciples below the stage couldn't help but shudder. The snow lotus sword art was currently Ling Zhao's most powerful martial skill. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he wouldn't easily use it. But today, under the condition of suppressing his cultivation, the snow lotus sword art had no choice but to use it. Yang Cheng was too strong, more than 10 times stronger than Lianal. His sword looked like a crystal and actually emitted a blue light. With this slash, Yang Cheng's originally fierce aura instantly became stagnant. Yang Cheng's wind cloud true essence was actually frozen. A very strange scene appeared on the stage. Yang Cheng, who was originally close to Ling Zhao, seemed to have been frozen into an ice sculpture by the deep winter's cold. Although in a flash the ice sculpture's shell shattered, and Yang Cheng had already broken free from it, but because of this his attack came to an abrupt end, and he frantically retreated. Because he was very clear that his true essence was not flowing smoothly, and at this time, forcefully attacking would not do him any good. Ling Zhao didn't chase after him, because this move also consumed a lot of his true essence. He was using the mountain river martial spirits, devouring true essence, ability to transform Yang Cheng's wind cloud true essence into his own true essence. In order to make up for the previous consumption, against Yang Cheng he couldn't be careless at all, and he had to always maintain sufficient true essence. Snow lotus sword art, flying snow. After a moment, Ling Zhao launched his attack. It was still the snow lotus sword art, but it had changed to the first move, flying snow. This first move was the fastest, and it was the most difficult to guard against. Behind him, the blood shadow martial spirit had already disappeared, and was replaced by the dark cloud martial spirit. This martial spirit, which he obtained from a ninja warrior, was most suitable for moves that could cause changes to the surrounding environment. Similar to wind, thunder, rain, lightning, snow, anything could be used. The dark cloud martial spirit condensed above Ling Zhao's head, and snowflakes drifted down from the dark cloud, accompanied by Ling Zhao's sword light, and instantly swept out as if it had turned into a snow dragon. Kacha! Slash! Ling Zhao's sword directly pierced through the tornado surrounding Yang Cheng, and then penetrated his protective true essence, leaving a very obvious sword wound on Yang Cheng's shoulder. This was because Yang Cheng's movement skill was excellent, and he managed to dodge in time. Otherwise, this sword would have directly taken his life. A half-step master was indeed powerful, but Ling Zhao's sword definitely had the power to kill a half-step master. Yang Cheng stared at the wound on his shoulder. Although it wasn't very serious, it was a very serious blow to Yang Cheng's self-confidence. This was already the third time that Ling Zhao had repelled him, and the second time that Ling Zhao had injured him, and he had yet to leave a single wound on Ling Zhao's body. At most, he had made Ling Zhao's face pale. Yang Cheng was actually injured again. Many onlookers even rubbed their eyes in disbelief afraid that they had some kind of illusion. Otherwise, how could Ling Xiao injure Yang Cheng again and again? In fact, this was not strange. Although Yang Cheng's strength was much stronger than Ling Xiao, who was at the peak of the 8th stage of the martial vein, he had fallen into Ling Xiao's control from the beginning. From Ling Xiao's first attack to Yang Cheng being repelled for the 3rd time, Yang Cheng was completely led by the nose by Ling Xiao. Under such circumstances, Yang Cheng couldn't use all his energy to fight in order to be able to react in time. If he didn't use all his strength, he naturally wouldn't be able to defeat Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao was in the soul-entrancing state, so he could see everything clearly. He could even grasp Yang Cheng's true essence and blood circulation. He knew that not only was Yang Cheng's mind in a mess, but his true essence was also in a mess. Therefore, he suddenly attacked again. The 4th move of the Snow Lotus Sword Art, Icy Heart. The 1st move of the Snow Lotus Sword Art, Flying Snow. With the help of the 4th move and the enhancement of the Dark Cloud Martial Soul, Ling Xiao's flying snow sword shone brightly, and the snowflakes in the sky almost covered the entire platform. That sword was as gentle as the flying snow, but as refreshing as lightning. However, when it was released, it was so terrifying. Chapter 277. Even the flow of the wind followed Ling Xiao's drifting snow sword, as if adding a pair of wind wings to his drifting snow sword. If one looked carefully, Ling Xiao's right hand that was holding the sword changed again. It was still in the demonized state, but it was not a dragon claw, but an ancient giant ape's palm. Evil Beast Demon King, the king of all evil beasts. The demonization of the 9 Devil Divine art could naturally demonize part or all of the body into various kinds of evil beasts. Whether it was the ancient demon dragon or the ancient giant ape, they were just one type. Of course, with Ling Xiao's current cultivation, he could not fully utilize the power of demonization, but it was enough to greatly increase his attack and speed. This kid's moves can actually become stronger. He actually held back just now. Damn it. Yang Cheng was shocked and angry. He did not expect that not only could he not easily defeat Ling Xiao, but he was also completely suppressed by Ling Xiao. How could he accept this? Wind, sword, martial spirit. Boom! After a terrifying explosion, a strange sword appeared behind Yang Cheng. It was surrounded by strong winds. It was the wind sword martial spirit, a type of sword martial spirit. Originally, Yang Cheng thought that he could defeat Ling Xiao without using his martial spirit. In that case, the impact on Ling Xiao would be even greater, and the victory would be even more shocking. But facing Ling Xiao's terrifying attack, he had no choice but to use his martial spirit. The wind sword martial spirit appeared. Yang Cheng shook the long sword in his hand, and a fierce tornado broke through the air. Its power was obviously much stronger than before. The wind raged, as if it was going to blow the snow away. Humph! You really think you can turn the situation around with your martial spirit? Not a chance. Cherry Tree Martial Spirit. Behind Ling Xiao, a giant tree suddenly appeared. Its huge branches and trunk blocked the attack of the wind. The Dark Cloud Martial Spirit and the Cherry Tree Martial Spirit worked together, and the 2 complete martial spirits released their power at the same time. In a flash, Yang Cheng's wind sword martial spirit was suppressed. The sword light kept flashing. Yang Cheng kept retreating. Dang! Dang! Thud, his figure was in a sorry state. There were already many wounds on his body. He was completely enveloped by Ling Xiao's sword light. This scene stunned all the spectators. They would never have thought that such a situation would occur. Yang Cheng has been completely suppressed. That Ling Xiao actually has 2 martial spirits, no, 3 martial spirits, and all of them are complete martial spirits. What a monster! No wonder he dares to challenge Yang Cheng. This brat really does have some skills. But even so, Yang Cheng shouldn't be in such a sorry state. What's going on? Who can tell me? Needless to say, the outer sect disciples were shocked. However, even people like Lan Yu, Elder Bai and He Suo couldn't help showing astonishment on their faces. Zhao Ji and Zhao Ci were completely petrified. Su Ying immediately knelt on the ground. She had always felt that Ling Xiao's killing of Zuolong was purely a sneak attack. She felt that as long as she joined Yuehua school, she would be able to avenge her fiancé sooner or later. But now her confidence was gone. Who was Yang Cheng? Yang Cheng was the 10th strongest among the outer sect disciples and a half-step master. He was 10 times stronger than Li Anil. Everyone knew his strength, but now he was being suppressed by a peak level 8 martial vein master. He couldn't even take care of himself. Wind and Cloud Dragon. Roar. Just as Yang Cheng was about to be forced to the edge of the stage, a dragon's roar suddenly rang out. The wind sword martial spirit behind him showed a faint shadow of a dragon. It seemed that the martial spirit was coiled by a divine dragon. At this moment, a terrifyingly powerful true origin, Qi, burst out from his body and rushed forward, towards Ling Xiao. Boom! There was a loud explosion. Below the stage, more than a dozen outer sect disciples were covered in blood. They were obviously seriously injured. A few of them even had their bones broken. Send him for treatment. The rest of you stand back. Elder Bai's voice rang out. He had not expected the battle to have such a turn of events. Yang Cheng's wind and cloud art had broken through at the critical moment and reached the transcendent stage, forming a terrifying scene. The power of this move was too great. Among the dozen or so outer sect disciples who were injured, 4 of them were potential inner sect disciples who were ranked in the top 30. The rest were peak level 9 martial vein masters. But he was injured to such an extent. Wouldn't Ling Xiao, a peak level 8 martial vein master, be blown to pieces? Elder Bai was a little worried. If something happened to Ling Xiao, wouldn't Hall Master Yang fight him to the death? However, when the smoke dissipated, Ling Xiao was floating in the air without a trace of injury on his body. Even his clothes weren't dirty. It turned out that, at that moment, Ling Xiao had analyzed the terrifying power of Yang Cheng's attack, so he gave up on continuing to attack. Instead, he suddenly escaped and flew into the air with the cloud dragon divine travel. He easily dodged the attack, but the martial artists behind him who were watching the show had to suffer. Yang Cheng's face was gloomy. His clothes were tattered and there were several bloodstains on his body. However, his wounds had already healed. His breathing had also returned to normal, but he was still panting heavily. Seeing Ling Xiao land on the ground, his eyes revealed a trace of fear. This was originally supposed to be a fun battle. They could just casually kill one of the beasts and obtain a 1,000-year-old golden snow lotus. But he never expected this. The housefly had suddenly turned into an ancient giant beast, making him tired of dealing with it. If it wasn't for the wind and cloud art breaking through under great pressure, he would have been defeated. How lucky! Isn't Ling Xiao a little too terrifying? How can he be so strong? Yeah, even Yang Cheng couldn't gain the slightest advantage. Li Anil's loss is not unjust. Humph, it's more than that. Look at the situation of the two. Yang Cheng is in a sorry state, but Ling Xiao is completely calm. I don't even know who is a half-step master. The audience had retreated a lot, but it didn't affect their discussion. In my opinion, Ling Xiao is only strong in his movement and attack, but his defense is weak. The one who spoke was a quasi-inner disciple, a half-step master. Why? Lu Chang, who is also a quasi-inner disciple, asked. The reason is very simple. Have you guys noticed that from the start of the fight until now, Ling Xiao has basically never met Yang Cheng head-on? Once Yang Cheng's attack has the potential to injure him, he will immediately dodge. This shows that his body is relatively weak, and his defense can't withstand a single blow. Aren't many warriors like this? The quasi-inner disciple said with certainty. Yes, senior brother, you are right. Although it seems that Ling Xiao has the advantage now, as long as senior brother Yang touches him, he will definitely be finished. Lianel had been treated. Although his injuries couldn't be healed so quickly, he could at least speak. He also supported the quasi-inner disciple's opinion. Chapter 278. Lu Chang shook his head and said, "Who told you that a powerful attack and movement skill can't mean a powerful defense?" Lu Chang, have you seen anyone who can perfectly achieve these 3 points? Lianel asked. No, I haven't. Lu Chang thought for a moment. A person's energy was limited. If one was involved in too many things, it would be impossible to cultivate to the strongest level. Ling Xiao's attack and movement skill had undoubtedly reached the level of a half-step master. He was even one of the best among the half-step masters. It was not easy to balance these two aspects. Very few people could do it. How could he want to do the same in defense? That was impossible. Was Ling Xiao still human? Well, his defense might not be strong, but it shouldn't be too weak. Lu Chang couldn't insist on his opinion. Even if his defense is not too weak, he will be killed instantly if his defense is not at the level of a half-step master. Do you believe it? Lianel smiled proudly. Originally, he was already a little worried, but after such an analysis, his confidence in Yang Qing suddenly increased in an instant. Lu Chang didn't say anything. He had been defeated by Yang Qing before, so he knew how powerful Yang Qing's attack was. Now that Yang Qing's wind and cloud art had reached the transcendent realm, his attack would only be stronger. Sigh, could it be that Ling Xiao is just a shooting star that suddenly rose and will fall in the blink of an eye? Deep in his heart, Lu Chang hoped that Ling Xiao would break the rules. It was not only because he wanted to take revenge for his loss to Yang Qing, but more importantly, he felt that if someone could break the rules, it meant that he could do it too. It was also a way to increase his confidence. However, after the analysis of Lianel and the other half-step inner disciple, he lost his hope. Yes, it was just a flash in the pan. How could a martial master at the peak of the 8th level of the martial vein be a match for a half-step master? His defense was his fatal weakness. Ling Xiao, your arrogance ends here. I admit that I underestimated you, but now you will suffer my most ruthless counterattack. I will let you know the price of injuring a half-step inner disciple. The wounds all over Yang Qing's body had already healed. As long as it was not a severed limb, this kind of recovery ability was not a big deal for a half-step master. Immediately after, the crazy true essence that he had used to attack Ling Xiao was once again released. The giant sword that had been wrapped in the wind whistled behind his back. It was obvious that it was more frightening than ever before. At that moment, Yang Qing's aura rose to the peak. There was actually a faint aura of a transcendent realm cultivator. Ling Xiao frowned slightly. It had to be said that the current Yang Qing was indeed much stronger than before. Ku! The audience swallowed their saliva again, waiting for the next tense scene. Wind and cloud dragon, wind and rain dragon roar. Yang Qing slowly raised the sword in his hand. At that moment, there was no one else in his eyes. Ling Xiao was completely locked in his aura. Above the long sword, there was a layer of solid true yuan. Compress! Compress! Compress again! This true essence was compressed to the extreme, as if it could explode at any time. Roar! As Yang Qing swung the sword, the roar of a dragon rang out. No, it was more like the roar of a dragon. The long sword emitted an extremely strange, spiral-shaped sword qi, which resembled a spiraling divine dragon. Wang, the air was completely distorted by the pressure. The spiraling sword qi, which was only a foot long, began to explode when it was 2 or 3 meters away from Ling Xiao. In Ling Xiao's eyes, it was as if he could see a winged dragon tearing through the void and rushing towards him, wanting to swallow him whole. This Yang Qing, I didn't expect that not only did he break through the wind and cloud secret art, but he also comprehended the killing move of the wind and rain sword art. It seems that Ling Xiao is really in trouble. Elder by side, he had not expected that everything Ling Xiao had done would actually be for the benefit of someone else. Not only had he failed to defeat Yangcheng, he had even allowed Yangcheng to break through the shackles of his inner force mantra under immense pressure. He had even comprehended a powerful sure-kill technique. Under this unprecedentedly powerful killing move, Ling Xiao could feel that his true yuan was becoming sluggish. It was as if a huge rock was pressing down on his chest, making it difficult for him to breathe smoothly. When he was locked in by this move, he knew that he couldn't rely on his movement technique to avoid it. This was because the speed of this move was even faster than his movement technique. You don't want me to dodge? Then I won't dodge it. At this moment, what he needed most was defense. Therefore, his martial soul changed again. Thunder Bear martial soul. That's right, it was a complete martial soul, not a remnant. After joining the Yuehua school, he realized that all the outer disciples of the Yuehua school had complete martial souls. At first, he didn't understand why. Later, he asked Old Hall Master Yang and understood that due to the Mountain River martial soul's reappearance in the world, the Yuehua school's Moonlight Pagoda was able to display its former power. As long as one entered the Yuehua school, the remnant martial soul would naturally improve rapidly until it became a complete martial soul. This was also the reason why Dai Yuling's martial soul was close to being a complete martial soul. His remnant martial soul was originally more complete than Dai Yuling's. Therefore, at this moment, his remnant martial soul had completely transformed into a complete martial soul. However, the improvement wouldn't be as fast. He still had to take it step by step. The Moonlight Pagoda could only help the remnant martial soul quickly improve. He believed that the other sects should have similar things. After using the Thunder Bear martial soul, Ling Xiao didn't stop increasing his defense. The third level of the Heavenly Dragon Golden Body, Heavenly Dragon Scale Armor, the 9 Demons Divine Art, Evil Beast Demon King, Complete Demonization. Ling Xiao's body underwent a huge change. At this moment, he was more like a dragon clan warrior wrapped in golden scales. Because it wasn't suitable for him to use a sword in this state, he withdrew the drifting snow sword and aimed his fists at Yangcheng. Sizzle! Lightning came from the Thunder Bear martial soul and wrapped around his fists. No, to be precise, it was a pair of dragon claws. The Divine Hell King Fist, Thunder Kill. The Divine Hell King Fist under the Thunder Bear martial soul increased in power. In terms of momentum, it wasn't inferior to Yangcheng's sword move. However, Ling Xiao knew that the purpose of this move wasn't to attack the opponent, but to offset part of the attack power of the opponent's sword move. Otherwise, his body wouldn't be able to withstand it. In an instant, the sound of thunder exploded. A pair of dragon claws wrapped in lightning struck the wind dragon. Boom! The wind dragon and the dragon claws met. Suddenly, 2 terrifying forces intertwined. A huge explosion sounded. A terrifying true origin vortex appeared between the two of them. The 2 different types of true origin intertwined. In an instant, there was no difference in strength. The people below were shocked to the core. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. The 2 people on the stage didn't give way to each other. Boom! Chapter 279. In this collision, Yangcheng had the absolute upper hand. His attack suppressed Ling Xiao's attack. However, the strange thing was that Yangcheng was pushed back 7 or 8 steps by the recoil. Ling Xiao was only pushed back 7 or 8 steps by the attack. His face turned pale for a moment, but it recovered in an instant. It was as if he was not injured at all. He was indeed not injured. Yangcheng's attack was not weak, but after being filtered by the 3 layers of Thunderclap Extermination, Demonized Body, and Sky Dragon Scale Armor, when it hit his body, it only had the force of impact. And his valiant body did not care about this bit of power at all. Others thought that Ling Xiao was most outstanding in his body movement and attack. In fact, he was most proud of his defense and body. What's going on? That Ling Xiao was clearly hit by Senior Yang's attack, but he was not injured? Lianl could not sit still and exclaimed, "Isn't that simple?" His defense is probably not inferior to Jin Ming's at all. In my opinion, his defense is his most outstanding point. At this time, Lu Chang was excited. He originally thought that everything would be settled after this exchange, but he did not expect Ling Xiao to give him another surprise. This is impossible. Could it be that he cultivated a gold-grade entry-level defensive martial art, and that he cultivated it to the perfection stage? Otherwise, he would not be able to block this attack. You and I both know the power of this attack very well. Nothing is impossible. This kid is a professional in surprises. Who would have thought that he could fight Yang Cheng until now? Who would have thought that he could actually injure Yang Cheng? Who would have thought that he would have no less than 4 martial spirits? This is something that only people with special physiques can do. Lu Chang's continuous questions made Li Anil and the other prospective inner disciples who supported Yang Cheng speechless. On the challenge stage, the battle was still ongoing. Yang Cheng saw that his first attack was not effective, so he took the opportunity to launch a second attack. Still, wind and rain dragon roar. With the perfection stage wind and cloud art, he could launch this attack several times in a row. Although it consumed a lot of energy in order to defeat Ling Xiao, he did not hesitate. The same move won't work on me. Ling Xiao sneered and went up to meet him again. Divine Hell King's Fist. Thunderclap, Ghost King Annihilation. Because he had a general understanding of Yang Cheng's move, Ling Xiao adopted a different attack strategy. The killing move was even more powerful. However, Ghost King Annihilation was much easier to grasp. Furthermore, it had a greater impact on one's soul. Ling Xiao had always believed that it was not necessary to use the strongest move, but to use it according to the situation. Under such circumstances, the slightly weaker Ghost King Annihilation was more suitable for his strategy. Although the momentum of this punch was not as strong as before, the Phantom of the Ghost King was still quite intimidating. Furthermore, Ling Xiao's attack this time wasn't aimed directly at the front. His punch was aimed at the weakest point of his opponent's sword technique. He didn't know about it earlier, so there was nothing he could do about it. Now that he knew, he naturally had to make use of it. Seeing this, it was already impossible for Yang Cheng to change his move. The attack power of this move was too strong. He couldn't control it at will. This was a sure kill move. Ling Xiao was all too clear about it. Bang! Bang! Ling Xiao's punch firmly hit the weakest point of Yang Cheng's sword technique. It was obviously weaker than the previous Thunderclap Life Annihilation, but the effect was even more shocking. The swaggering wind dragon was completely scattered. Then, Ling Xiao continued to press forward, not giving Yang Cheng any chance to think. Yang Cheng hurriedly responded, thrusting out his sword continuously. The power of his moves was getting worse and worse. It looked like he was at the end of his rope. Bang bang! Bang bang! Bang! After a few exchanges, Ling Xiao's attacks became fiercer and fiercer. As the battle dragged on, his true essence was constantly replenished. However, Yang Cheng's true essence was constantly being consumed, and it was a huge consumption. At this time, the battle had already lasted for half an hour. Yang Cheng's true essence was really being consumed. One was getting stronger and stronger. The other was getting weaker and weaker. Anyone with a discerning eye could see this situation. Looking at the two people who were constantly exchanging blows on the stage, the spectating outer court disciples all had an indescribable feeling. It was obvious that if Yang Cheng didn't have any trump cards, he would definitely lose this time. Ling Xiao was a complete dark horse. His terrifying battle strength had completely intimidated most of the outer court disciples. It was believed that after this battle, other than the top 10 outer court disciples, no one would dare to easily find trouble with him. Even those in the top 10 of the outer sect would have to consider the consequences of losing to him. Senior brother Yang won't lose. He definitely won't lose. Ling Xiao is only at the peak of the 8th level of the martial vein. His true essence can't be stronger than senior brother Yang's. More vigorous. Ouch. Li Anil was really unwilling to believe the truth in front of his eyes. He almost shouted himself hoarse. The original wound tore open, and he couldn't help but cry out in pain. Didn't you say that the top 10 guys all have trump cards? Yang Cheng should also take it out, right? Lu Chang suddenly said, Yes, that's right, the top 10 outer court disciples all have precious grade artifacts. But senior brother Yang is still using his discarded fine-grade artifact sword. Li Anil's eyes suddenly lit up. He had a treasured spear. There was no reason why Yang Cheng didn't have a treasure of that level. Since he couldn't win with his strength, then there was nothing wrong with relying on his treasured weapon to win. It was better than losing miserably. Yang Cheng should have 2 precious artifacts. One of them is a weapon, but I'm not sure about the other one. Lu Chang muttered, If he takes out his treasured weapon, Ling Xiao will probably still lose. It's such a pity. The old outer court disciples all knew about this, but they also didn't feel good in their hearts. A dignified top 10 outer court disciple actually had to use a treasured weapon to win. If this were to spread out, they would probably laugh to death. No, this guy's true essence seems to be endless, getting stronger and stronger. If this continues, I will definitely lose. On the stage, Yang Cheng was extremely depressed. It seems that I can only use that thing. After all, he still cared about his face, so from the beginning, he didn't plan to use a stronger treasure to crush his opponent. But Ling Xiao's performance was too monstrous and too unexpected. According to common sense, a martial master at the peak of the 8th layer of the martial vein should have exhausted his true essence by now. Even an early or middle 9th layer martial vein master should have almost exhausted his true essence. But this kid was too strange. Of course, he didn't know that Ling Xiao's total true essence was no less than a 1st layer transcendent realm cultivator. Not to mention, the mountain river martial spirit had the special ability to devour true essence and could constantly replenish it. If Ling Xiao's true essence was exhausted, then Yang Cheng's true essence should have been exhausted even earlier. Below the stage, Lan Yu's beautiful eyes were dull. Chapter 280. Lan Yu's eyes were filled with surprise and confusion. Lane, all fairness, if they were at the same cultivation level, no, even if it was Yang Cheng, she would at most be evenly matched with Ling Xiao. It was absolutely impossible for her to win. This little brat was simply a true monster. She had been worried that he would be taught a lesson by Yang Cheng, but now it seemed that her worries were completely unnecessary. She suddenly had a strange thought. She was now a 9th layer transcendent realm master. Perhaps in a year or 2, this Ling Xiao would catch up or even surpass her. It's time to end this. Just as Lan Yu was thinking, she suddenly heard Yang Cheng's voice. At that moment, Yang Cheng suddenly took out a golden ball-shaped object from his pocket. That's a treasure-grade artifact, hidden weapon. Lan Yu couldn't help but feel her heart in her throat. A treasure-grade artifact was extremely powerful, especially in the hands of a half-step grandmaster. It could easily kill cultivators below the peak of the 9th layer martial vein. Apart from the inner sect disciples, only the top 10 outer sect disciples were qualified to obtain such an artifact. Ling Xiao, be careful! Lan Yu couldn't help but shout. She knew that a treasure-grade artifact's hidden weapon had terrifying lethality. Ling Xiao naturally knew this as well. Furthermore, the moment Yang Cheng took out that item, he understood what was going on. This battle couldn't continue. If the other side used a treasure-grade artifact, this battle would lose its meaning of training. Even if he won, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. He didn't want that to happen. One had to know that the reason he challenged Li Anil and Yang Cheng today was to take revenge and teach them a lesson. If he was beaten badly instead, what was the point of fighting? It was indeed time to end this. Ice heart, terrifying finger. Until today, Ling Xiao still didn't understand what kind of martial art this terrifying finger was. He had learned this move from the blue-clothed woman he met in the dragon subduing mountain range and had almost perfected it. But the more he used it, the more frightened he became. This was because this move, in terms of damage to the body, was not inferior to the Snow Lotus sword technique. In terms of lethality to the soul, it far surpassed all his other moves. The only problem was that it consumed a lot of energy, and the more perfect it was, the greater the consumption. This was also the reason why he didn't want to use this move too often. Today, the combination of the Ice Heart and the Terrifying Finger could be considered a brand new attempt. He had used it on his martial spirit avatar before. Ice Heart could freeze the body and soul with the Finger of Terror. This move did not have the slightest bit of momentum. It was plain to the extreme. He simply raised his hand and slowly pointed a finger. Buzz, the moment he made his move, the spiritual ether at his fingertips turned into a thin ray of light. Suddenly, it swallowed the surrounding natural ether. How did he know this move? Elderby stood up abruptly. His expression was uncertain, but he also seemed to be a little confused. No, it seems a little different. But why is the aura so similar? In fact, Elderby was not the only one who was surprised. Laniware was also surprised. She also felt a familiar aura from Ling Zhao's Terrifying Finger, but he couldn't be sure at the moment. What is he doing? This was Yang Cheng's thought before he collapsed. He was prepared to use the most lethal weapon among the treasured artifacts to end the battle, but suddenly he saw Ling Zhao pointing at him. There was no reaction at all. He only felt pain on his body, and then his whole body was filled with a cold aura. Especially in the depths of his soul, it was as if it was completely frozen in an instant. Bang! Yang Cheng fell straight on the stage. A small bloody hole was very conspicuous on his shoulder. If it wasn't for the fact that this was an exchange of pointers within the sect, this small hole would have appeared in between Yang Cheng's eyebrows or his heart. He had really managed to save his life. Ah! Suddenly, Yang Cheng, who was lying on the ground, let out a heart-wrenching scream. He began to roll around crazily and began to scratch his head as if he wanted to dig it out. Boom! Due to carelessness, the treasured artifact that he had prepared to use to attack Ling Zhao was activated. It was a fire and lightning attribute, hidden weapon. After it exploded, Yang Cheng's whole body was covered in blood. It was a ghastly sight, and his face was almost unrecognizable. Even his eyeballs were blown out of their sockets. Both of his legs had long been blown to God knows where. He had become a cripple. Ling Zhao couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Fortunately, he attacked first. Otherwise, if he was hit by this hidden weapon, even if he didn't die, he would be severely crippled. This Yang Qing had completely forgotten the sect's rules. In his rage, he wanted to cripple Ling Zhao. In the end, he suffered the consequences of his own actions. Sympathy? Ling Zhao didn't have the slightest sympathy. He really wanted to kill this kind of person, but he couldn't do it because of the sect's rules. What a terrifying finger! Although many people didn't see clearly what happened with Ling Zhao's finger, they saw the result clearly. Yang Cheng was crippled. This scene caused everyone's hair to stand on end. Even if the hidden weapon didn't explode, Yang Cheng's heart-wrenching scream made people shudder. Is it really our sect's dragon-slaying finger? Elderby was still puzzled by this question. Lan Yu also had the same question. On the stage, Yang Qing had already fainted. Someone had already carried him off the stage and sent him to the medicine hall for treatment. No matter what, Yang Qing was still a disciple of the Yuehua school. He still needed to be treated. As for what would happen in the future, it wasn't something they should consider now. Elderby, aren't you going to announce the result? Ling Zhao looked at Elderby and asked, Oh yes, the result. Elderby recovered from his thoughts and announced loudly, Ling Zhao challenged the 10th outer disciple, Yang Cheng, and won. He will replace Yang Cheng and become the 10th inner disciple. Elderby's slightly agitated voice echoed in the square. Originally, he only had a little bit of expectation for Ling Xiao. He didn't expect this kid to really do it. It was too surprising. Go back and tell the top 30 outer disciples who didn't come to watch the battle. If you continue to be stubborn, you will only be defeated one by one. Just like Yang Cheng's ending today. Taking advantage of Yang Cheng's defeat, Elder Bai also said what he wanted to say. This was what he had always wanted to express. It was a pity that in the past no one could challenge the foundation of the top 30 outer disciples. His words obviously didn't have much effect, but it was completely different today. Ling Xiao took a deep breath. He didn't care about Elder Bai's purpose. He only cared that after this battle, no one would come looking for trouble. He looked coldly at Li Anil and the others. Chapter 281. Li Anil slumped to the ground. No matter what, he wouldn't dare to provoke Ling Xiao. As for Tian Chao, who had once caused trouble for Ling Xiao, he directly knelt on the ground and kept muttering something. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. He wasn't a person who would take advantage of others. As long as these people didn't provoke him in the future, he wouldn't bother to deal with them. As for Li Anil and Yang Cheng, he left them for Wu Xiang. He didn't need to kill them. In the cave house in the distance, He Suo had been watching the battle. Damn it, Master said that we don't need to pay attention to this person and that he won't be able to cause any trouble. But now this kid has already defeated Yang Cheng and established his prestige in the outer sect. In the future, he might become a big problem. He Suo was different from the flame deity. The flame deity didn't bother to care about the younger generation, especially one with no talent. He was very busy. How could he be in the mood to care about this? But He Suo didn't care. He had been paying attention to Ling Xiao since the day he entered Yuehua school. Ling Xiao, this guy, although his talent wasn't very good, his fighting skills were too amazing. He had repeatedly beaten the people he sent. Now he had hooked up with Lan Yu. Originally, he thought that Yang Cheng could easily defeat Ling Xiao and embarrass this kid in front of Lan Yu. Then Lan Yu wouldn't mix with this kid, but who knew that the result would be the opposite of what he wanted. He was so angry that he wanted to kill Ling Xiao with his own hands, but he knew that he couldn't do that. Not to mention that he couldn't get past Elder Bai. Even with Ling Xiao's movement technique, he might not be able to catch up. Now that this kid was protected by Lan Yu and Hall Master Yang, he couldn't do anything unless he didn't want to stay in Yuehua school anymore. With these people protecting him, even his master, the flame deity, wouldn't be able to do anything. Senior brother He Suo, aren't you thinking too highly of this Ling Xiao? The reason Yang Cheng lost was purely because he neglected his cultivation. Jin Ming, who was sitting beside He Suo, was very calm. He said he was going into seclusion, but he was actually in He Suo's cave. With He Suo's guidance, his improvement was naturally faster. You think so? He Suo asked. That's right, that's right. Yang Cheng has been very complacent recently. He's been slacking in his cultivation. It's already good enough that his strength hasn't regressed. It's impossible for him to make any progress. He only has himself to blame for losing to Ling Xiao today. Jin Ming said indifferently. Then, do you have the confidence to defeat Ling Xiao? He Suo asked again. Jin Ming nodded and said, Senior brother He Suo, you're overestimating others' morale and diminishing your own. Against this little brat Ling Xiao, I can win in less than 5 moves. He Suo didn't doubt Jin Ming's statement because Jin Ming was simply a martial arts fanatic and would never lie. Unless he misjudged Ling Xiao's strength, it was absolutely impossible for him to exaggerate. The top 10 of the outer sect were all difficult to deal with. Ling Xiao actually took so long to deal with the weakest 10th place disciple, and in the end he was almost overturned by Ling Xiao. It was enough to show that Ling Xiao's strength was just so. And in the top 10, every time one moved up a rank, their strength would more than double. The further one went, the more terrifying their strength would be. The top 3 outer sect disciples even had the experience of defeating a first-order transcendent realm cultivator. And Jin Ming was one of these 3 people. If he could even defeat a transcendent realm master, what could Ling Xiao, a mere peak 8th layer Martial Vein, count as? Thinking of this, He Suo couldn't help but laugh at himself. He was really a little too nervous. In fact, it was completely unnecessary. Elder He is here. Since you're here, come and have a cup of tea. Suddenly, He Suo cupped his fists towards a dark corner. Elder He, like Elder Bai, was one of the 2 great elders of the outer sect. He was responsible for daily affairs, and his strength was second only to the hall master of the outer sect main hall. And this Elder He was from the same clan as He Suo, so their relationship was very good. In addition, Elder He had been taken care of by the flame deity in the past, so if the flame deity or He Suo needed anything, he would usually help. Greetings, Elder He. Jin Ming got up and bowed his head. This Elder He was also a 9th layer transcendent realm master. Although Jin Ming could defeat a first-order transcendent realm cultivator in front of a 9th layer transcendent, he was just an ant. So, naturally, he had to be respectful. No need for formalities. He Suo, I've observed this Ling Xiao that you're talking about. It's really amazing. I don't know what his talent is, but his combat ability is definitely too outstanding. Even this old man can't compare to him. Elder He was dressed in black, and his face was haggard, as if he was about to become a skeleton. But one couldn't underestimate this person. Even the flame deity had to show him some respect. After all, a 9th layer transcendent realm master could break through to the heaven realm at any time. Is he really that powerful? He Suo frowned. Haha, but you don't have to worry, although his combat skills are superb. They are limited to those below the transcendent realm. Jin Ming was right just now. He should be able to easily defeat Ling Xiao, but 5 moves won't be enough, at least 30. Elder He smiled as he sat down. He took a sip of tea and said, "Don't worry." Jin Ming frowned, but didn't dare to refute. Elder He, that little brat Ling Xiao once injured me, disrespected my honored master, and is also the disciple of that old man Bai Yin. Can't you find an excuse to teach him a lesson? I don't need you to do anything. Just don't let him grow. He Suo said as he poured tea for Elder He. Teach him a lesson? Haha. Do you want me to offend Old Hall Master Yang and Sister Lon? Elder Black sneered. Not to mention that we can't afford to provoke Miss Lan's master, nor can we afford to provoke Heavenly Venerable Devil Flame. Let's just talk about Old Hall Master Yang. I still want to get more pills from him. If I offend him, how much will I lose? That can't be, Elder He. That Ling Xiao is just doing odd jobs in the medicine hall. Could it be that Old Hall Master Yang will make things difficult for you because of him? He Suo asked in confusion. What do you know? Old Hall Master Yang wanted to accept that brat as a disciple many times, saying that the brat has talent in alchemy, but that brat actually refused to acknowledge him as a master and was only willing to follow him as a medicine boy. Elder He scolded, but this old man has talked with Old Hall Master Yang before. He really trains this brat as his successor and cherishes him. With his temper, if anyone really dares to bully Ling Xiao, Old Hall Master Yang will definitely explode. What? He Suo was even angrier. How could Ling Xiao be so lucky? He actually found such a good backer as soon as he entered the sect, so that he couldn't deal with this brat openly. You can't do it openly, but you can still make things difficult for him behind his back, but the risk is too great. Haha, this old man won't do a losing business. Elder He suddenly said. When He Suo heard this, he secretly scolded this old thing for being insatiably greedy. But sometimes being insatiable was a good thing, as long as he could do things for him after being greedy. Don't worry, Elder He, the benefits I gave you in the past will be doubled. What do you think? He Suo said with a smile. Seeing that you and I are of the same clan, this old man will give you a discount. Increase it tenfold, this old man can consider it. Chapter 282. Old Fox. Bah. Looking at Elder Hay's back, Haysuwa couldn't help but curse. Elder Hay's request was too high. He couldn't satisfy him with 10 times the reward. But it didn't matter. He didn't dare to deal with Ling Xiao openly, but he could do it secretly. Moreover, no one would say anything if he did it according to the sect's rules. After the battle between Ling Xiao and Yang Cheng, he could feel that his comprehension of Snow Lotus sword technique and Divine Prison King fist had improved. This was the benefit of actual combat. It was definitely not something that could be achieved by sitting there and cultivating. He wasn't injured, but he had consumed a lot of energy. However, in front of outsiders, he didn't show the slightest sign of fatigue. Just like before, he slowly walked down the challenge stage, facing the fearful and jealous gazes of all the outer disciples below the stage. He walked to Lan Yu's side. "Senior sister, I didn't let you down, right?" He grinned, revealing a mouthful of snow-white teeth, showing the innocence of a child. Yes, he was only 14 years old now. Wasn't he just a child? Humph, you actually made us worry. How should I punish you? Lan Yu said angrily. Why don't I invite senior sister, old Hall Master Yang, and you Ling to have a meal together? Ling Xiao said with a smile. Okay, but you have to cook it yourself. Moreover, the ingredients must be at least 100 years old. Otherwise, it won't be good for us martial artists. Lan Yu said with a smile. This wasn't the first time she showed a bright smile in front of Ling Xiao. Thanks to Ling Xiao, the other outer sect disciples had a feast for their eyes today. More than 100 years old? Okay, no problem. Ling Xiao thought about it. In his mountain river world, there were not only 100-year-old ginseng and antler, but also 100-year-old pheasant. In addition, there are also some 100-year-old seasonings. It shouldn't be a problem to make a ginseng chicken soup. So he agreed. Only he could do it. Others really didn't have this ability. It was too extravagant to use 100-year-old ingredients to make dishes. However, this was not a problem for Ling Xiao. He believed that as his ability as master of the mountains and rivers continued to improve, he would be able to use materials that were 500 years old, 1,000 years old, or even 10,000 years old to make dishes at will. In fact, perhaps it was because he had once been a little beggar, but his desire for good food far surpassed his desire for pills. Fortunately, the two didn't contradict each other. In fact, if he understood pharmacology, it would be easier for him to match them when cooking dishes in the future. Keep bragging. Do you think it's so easy to get materials that are more than 100 years old? Lan Yu really didn't believe it. After all, the longest living person in Yuehua school was only 300 to 400 years old. Materials that were over 100 years old were really hard to come by. Ha ha ha. Congratulations, junior brother Ling. You've actually really defeated Li Anil and Yang Qing to become a quasi-inner court disciple in one go. You've simply revealed your invincible might, and it's truly admirable. Zhao Ji was the first to congratulate Ling Xiao. This person was not on the same side as Ling Xiao, but he had always tried his best not to offend Ling Xiao, which could be considered a very wise decision. Senior brother Ling is too awesome. Let's see how those old outer court disciples can still show off now, especially that Li Anil. He even used a leather whip to whip us yesterday. Congratulations, senior brother Ling. Congratulations, senior brother Ling. You're simply a role model for our generation. You've broken the 100,000-year-old record of Yuehua school. In fact, many outer court disciples were older than Ling Xiao. Since they had entered the sect at the same time, it was reasonable for them to address him as junior brother Ling Xiao, but they didn't dare to. Ling Xiao's strength made them fearful. Therefore, they simply addressed Ling Xiao as senior brother. It wasn't that they couldn't do this. After all, in the sect, strength was always respected. Zhao Ci couldn't lower herself to flatter Ling Xiao. This woman's personality was somewhat straightforward. Unfortunately, she couldn't lower herself to do so, and Ling Xiao wouldn't care about her. Su Ying, on the other hand, was dissatisfied. So what if you can defeat Yang Qing? Your potential is not as good as mine. Even if you look very good now, you'll be worse than me in the future. Just wait and see. She gritted her teeth and turned to leave. Of course, she had to avenge her fiancé, but not now. This time, among the new disciples of Yuehua School, other than Leng Hao, who had been directly accepted as an inner court disciple by Heavenly Master Golden Light, Ling Xiao could be considered the first person to make it into the top 10 outer court disciples. After becoming a prospective inner court disciple, especially one of the top 10 prospective inner court disciples, Ling Xiao would have his own cave abode. This was more comfortable than living in the medicine hall's house. Of course, the best thing was that these cave abodes were built in places with abundant spirit qi and were protected by arrays. Not only would cultivation be twice the result with half the effort, but even if someone wanted to plot against him, they wouldn't be able to do it. As a prospective inner court disciple ranked 10th, the salary he received was naturally much higher than other outer court disciples. Ordinary outer court disciples only received 10 low-grade spirit stones and 10 low-grade, yellow-grade spirit pills every month. As a prospective inner court disciple ranked 10th, this amount was 20 times more. Moreover, he didn't have to do heavy labor. He only had to focus on cultivation. In addition, he had some special privileges that other outer court disciples didn't dare to imagine. This was also the reason why Ling Xiao had to challenge Yang Cheng and Lianal. However, these things would naturally be taken care of by the outer court disciples, so Ling Xiao didn't have to worry about it. What he needed to do was to go to the outer court headquarters to collect 10 low-grade, yellow-grade spirit pills and a precious long spear. This was what Yang Cheng and Lianal had bet there. Of course, he also took back his 1,000-year golden snow lotus. He wasn't in a hurry to use this thing, so he still kept it in the mountain river world to cultivate. For things like medicinal herbs, the older they were, the more spiritual they would become, and the more beneficial they would be to martial artists. A low-grade, yellow-grade spirit pill didn't sound like much, but it had to be known that this kind of spirit pill was actually better than the best pills in the secular world. It could even be said that this was a real pill. The pills in the secular world weren't real pills at all. When he returned to the medicine hall with Lan Yu, Old Hall Master Yang greeted him with a smile. He was the medicine hall's hall master and was very concerned about Ling Xiao. Although he didn't say much, he asked Lan Yu, to tell him the result of the challenge immediately. If Ling Xiao was in danger, he would rush over immediately. "Kid, you're really good. You actually took care of those 2 brats. Well done, but don't be arrogant. A battle below the transcendent realm is just a small matter. In the future, you still have to concentrate on learning alchemy and become an outstanding alchemist." Old Hall Master Yang always felt that it would be a pity if Ling Xiao didn't become an alchemist. "Old Senior, you saw that I won. Shouldn't you give me a reward?" Ling Xiao said with a smile.